You're pitiful, just a dropout kid from the lowest rung. I bet you were raised in poverty and your kid is living at the bottom of society. I understand your perspective. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mary. My life has been a roller coaster, to say the least. When I was about to finish middle school, tragedy struck. I lost both my parents in a short span of time. Coping with such loss, my focus shattered, and I couldn't muster the will to study for exams anymore. Predictably, I failed all my high school entrance exams, even the backups. At 15, I found myself at a crossroads, gap year or workforce. To be honest, I did have aspirations of attending high school, but the family members who took me in were financially strained. Moreover, I felt compelled to preserve my parents' life insurance payout for future needs. Add to that the discomfort of entering high school a year late, and the decision to start working seemed the most practical. I must have been 19 then, in a relationship with John, a colleague at my workplace who was 27 at the time. You're involved with someone much older? Are you sure about this? A man pursuing a 19-year-old, can he truly be responsible? My aunt, a relative, expressed her concern, but youthful and headstrong, I disregarded her advice. John is wonderful. Sure, there's an age gap, but 8 years isn't uncommon, right? Well, if it were 25 and 33, perhaps, but 19 and 27 is quite a difference. What's the difference? Quit talking down about him. With that sentiment in mind, we tied the knot when I turned 20. A few months later, I discovered I was pregnant. Initially, I was overjoyed, but it was short-lived. When I broke the news to John, his response shattered me. What? You're planning to keep it? Seriously? No chance. I can't handle having a child with a dropout. Why should I be burdened with raising a kid who'll end up like you? Why would you say such hurtful things? You knew about my dropout status before we got married, didn't you? Yeah, I suppose, but no, it won't work out. I mean, having a child with a dropout, the child will turn out odd, right? I don't want to raise a kid like that. I also want more freedom. John's words stung, and soon he began avoiding me both at home and at work, pressing for a divorce. Over time, my feelings for him waned and I eventually consented to the split. However, my job at the time, within a small company, lacked any provision for maternity or paternity leave, leaving me no option but to resign concurrently with the divorce. With the support of my relatives and what remained of my parents' life insurance, I safely delivered my son Jacob, pouring all my love into raising him. Despite the financial strain, I remained healthy after childbirth, juggling multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. By the time Jacob entered elementary school, I secured a full-time position, granting both financial stability and emotional bandwidth. Now, 2 decades have elapsed since those trying times. These days, Jacob and I even indulge in leisurely outings together. Hey, are you perhaps married? Suddenly, a familiar voice pierced through the air, a voice I had hoped to erase from memory. It belonged to John, my ex-husband, the man who deserted me during my pregnancy 2 decades ago. I thought it might be you, Mary. So what brings you to a department store on your day off? Seems a bit upscale for you, John remarked, a smirk playing on his lips. Jacob, likely bewildered by the unexpected encounter, stood quietly, his expression troubled. I figured he might be your new beau, but he looks rather young, doesn't he? Ah, is this the kid from all those years ago? Ah, it's a boy. Well, it's none of my concern anyway, John continued. Indeed, you and I have long parted ways, John. Why are you even speaking to me? Don't be so bitter, Mary. Remember, we used to be deeply in love. Seems like you've turned into quite the cold-hearted woman, haven't you? John's grin held a hint of mockery, as if the past held no significance to him. Then, he uttered something utterly audacious. By the way, is he also a dropout? What? What are you implying? I retorted, taken aback by his insensitivity. Well, I mean, like mother, like son, right? If you dropped out, it's only logical that he would too, isn't it? John's words dripped with disdain. Enough. Stop with your hurtful comments, I snapped, unable to tolerate his callousness any longer. Ah, but he's got my genes, so he must have at least graduated high school, right? Although, in today's world, even with a diploma, you're still scraping the bottom of the barrel, John boasted, dropping the name of a renowned multinational corporation, the kind often plastered across TV screens. Surely, you've heard of this company, Mary. I'm a department head in a major corporation now. I guess you could say I'm part of the elite. he declared. And what would the elite want with someone like me? Are you daft? Do you honestly think I have any interest in someone as ignorant and destitute as you? I only spoke to you out of nostalgia. Frankly, you're nothing but a bother, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Don't say that, John protested weakly. That's why you'll never achieve anything significant. Ever since you entered my life, my fortunes have changed for the better. I was recruited by a prestigious corporation, and my career has been skyrocketing ever since. Life is certainly smoother without someone like you bringing bad luck. So, I'm a bad omen to you, John? If that's the case, perhaps it's best if you refrain from contacting me altogether. No, sometimes I'd just like to glance at the bottom of the barrel to remind myself of how fortunate I am. You see, in my workplace, there's no one quite like you, not even among the lowest-ranked employees. But it's true what they say about poverty. It's like a vortex, pulling you down no matter what. Is that all you wanted to say? We're pressed for time, I interjected, urging John to get to the point. Just a moment, let me have a word with my son, John replied casually, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder with a self-satisfied grin. Then, with a smile still lingering on his face, he addressed Jacob. Life may be tough for you too, but it is what it is. Blame your mother for her poverty and lack of education. If you're looking for someone to resent, point it towards her for having you straight out of middle school. John's expression radiated satisfaction as he glanced around. John, what's taking so long? The restroom was crowded, I inquired, wondering why he was lingering. Oh, I just bumped into someone from the past, John replied casually, as if nothing significant had occurred. At that moment, his wife or girlfriend joined him, a striking woman who seemed intimately connected to John. Can you believe it? This woman dropped out of high school midway through. Not even a high school graduate, but a middle school dropout. Can you imagine? John boasted, his tone dripping with condescension. And her son is likely to follow suit, destined for the bottom rung of society. Aren't you glad you didn't have to endure such a dismal existence? You're fortunate to have landed a high achiever like me, he continued, oblivious to our presence as if we were invisible. However, the woman seemed to take notice of Jacob when he lifted his head. Peering up from her books, her expression turned startled. She pointed at him, her hand trembling uncontrollably. Isn't he? What's the matter? I asked, perplexed by her sudden reaction. Isn't that the president of one of our major clients? She exclaimed. Startled by her outburst, John pivoted around. The moment his gaze landed on Jacob's face, his eyes widened in recognition. Seeing this reaction, Jacob slowly spoke up. I heard your company's name earlier, but upon seeing your face, I suspected it might be you. Indeed, you are the one. Thank you for your hospitality at that dinner the other day. Oh, that. Mr. Jacob, you seemed quite reserved during our dinner. It's quite surprising to witness you publicly criticizing others, labeling them as low-life and uneducated at your whim. Quite impolite of you, isn't it? The woman Lily remarked with a touch of reproach. No, that's... Lily, why didn't you inform me? John interjected, his tone tinged with frustration. I couldn't get a good look at him. Plus, I work in a different department. I can't possibly remember all the clients' faces. Lily defended herself, her voice tinged with apprehension. Useless. What did you just say? John snapped, the tension between him and Lily escalating rapidly. However, Jacob remained unfazed by their argument and spoke up calmly. Well, I'm not particularly interested in your quarrel. I now have a clearer understanding of the director's usual approach. We were in talks about implementing our system in your company, but let's abandon that idea. No, please wait, this is all just a misunderstanding, Jacob interjected, his voice tinged with urgency. Misunderstanding? How is it a misunderstanding when you publicly insulted me? John retorted, his tone laced with indignation. Well, you see, Jacob faltered, struggling to find the right words to explain himself. Mary, this is your fault, John interjected suddenly, redirecting the blame. What? How is this my fault? Mary questioned, bewildered by John's accusation. Because, why on earth would someone like you, a high school dropout, be with Mr. Jacob? Do you even realize who he is? He founded a business while still in college and holds numerous patents. The system he developed is so advanced that major companies are vying to adopt it, John explained, his voice dripping with condescension. Is that so? And why are you with him when you didn't even know that? Mary countered, her tone tinged with skepticism. I'm not quite sure. I don't typically discuss work matters with my son, John replied hesitantly. Your son? Mary echoed, her tone reflecting surprise. Yes, that's correct. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I am Jacob, the prodigy, son of the high school dropout. Jacob interjected confidently. Well, that's, John stammered, caught off guard by Jacob's assertion. It seems you have something on your mind regarding my mother. Please feel free to express yourself. We likely won't have another chance to converse, Jacob encouraged, his tone composed. Oh, well, what's the situation here? How come someone like you? Why is someone like Jacob's mother, a high school dropout? John stumbled over his words, struggling to articulate his thoughts. John faltered, taken aback by Jacob's unexpected interjection. He appeared torn, as if he wanted to retort but found himself at a loss for words. His gaze shifted uneasily between Mary and Jacob. From my earliest memories, my mother instilled in me a wealth of knowledge. Despite her lack of formal education beyond middle school, she delved into countless books and shared their wisdom with me, Jacob continued, his voice steady and composed. What? I never knew Mary possessed such depth, John muttered, visibly surprised. But there was one subject my mother remained silent on, the criticisms of my father, who abandoned us during her pregnancy. I've harbored resentment towards my father for as long as I can remember, but my mother always insisted it was her own naivety that led to our struggles. Even in our most dire circumstances, when we had nothing and were barely scraping by, she maintained a radiant smile. She's the person I admire most, Jacob recounted, his voice tinged with reverence. So you hold her in high regard, but Mr. Jacob, you share my bloodline, don't you? Can't you consider signing the contract with my company? John pressed, his tone pleading. Yes, I could. However, what's truly unacceptable here is your behavior. We're in a public setting, you know. Have you not considered the embarrassment you're causing? Jacob countered, his tone firm. Well, that's just my honest opinion. I simply perceive Mary as lacking in intelligence, that's all, John retorted, his tone unapologetic. And what does that make you, the man who fathered a child with this woman you call stupid? What kind of person does that make you, abandoning her when she was so young? Maybe she was innocent, but do you have any idea of the hardships she endured? You seem proud of your position in a big company, but why didn't you contribute even a single cent in child support? Jacob's accusations hung heavy in the air, leaving John speechless. As Jacob's words sank in, Lily's expression transformed. From a troubled look, her face now bore a glare directed squarely at John. Wait a minute, that's not what you told me. No, you just be quiet. That can't be true. Didn't you share with me that your previous wife cheated on you and left, that she denied you access to your child, and even refused your attempts to provide child support, forcing you to save instead? Was that entire story just a fabrication? Lily's voice was edged with disbelief and accusation. It seems highly likely that it was a fabrication. My mother and I still reside with our relatives. He knows where we are if he truly intended to provide child support. Mom, has this man ever attempted to contact you? Jacob inquired. Not once. Not on my cell phone. Not at any relative's house. And certainly, there's been no mention of child support, Mary confirmed, her tone tinged with disappointment. My revelation seemed to ignite fury in Lily, while John's complexion drained of color. You lied. You're despicable. I'm relieved I didn't marry you. It's over between us, Lily declared, her voice trembling with anger. What? Wait, Lily, please don't go, John pleaded, desperation evident in his tone. John hastily pursued Lily, leaving Jacob and me to exchange a knowing glance before erupting into laughter. John's pitiful demeanor was simply too amusing to ignore. Afterward, we indulged in some window shopping, feeling thoroughly content as we headed home. Later, Jacob filled me in on the situation. His company and John's were on the verge of sealing a significant contract, but Jacob opted to pull out at the 11th hour. Apparently, he was entirely transparent about his reasons. Your representative was my father, the man who abandoned my pregnant mother and neglected to provide child support. It's inconceivable to trust such an individual and engage in business with him. The system I've developed is akin to my own offspring. Entrusting it to him, just the thought makes my skin crawl. Predictably, this turn of events stirred up considerable turmoil. Allegedly, the company penalized John by demoting him and sidelining his role. It appears they're hoping to coax Jacob into reconsidering the contracts by making an example of John. From Jacob's perspective, it seems he might entertain the idea if they slash John's bonus. Undoubtedly, John is about to face some challenging times, but perhaps it's what he deserves, isn't it? At 48, he only has to weather another 12 years until retirement. My mom endured much harsher circumstances for far longer. When you put it into perspective, this isn't all that tough. Jacob's expression was one of genuine anger as he voiced these sentiments. I empathize with his emotions, so I have no intention of intervening. In his desperation, John has sought refuge at our relative's home. With a deep bow at the entrance, he pleads desperately. I'm deeply sorry for what I did in the past. I lied about providing child support, but I do have savings now. I'm willing to offer Jacob the equivalent of child support as a gift while I'm alive. I'll even compensate Mary if necessary. Please reconsider, John implored. However, Jacob refused to entertain such propositions. Turning to John, he stated firmly, I have no interest in your savings now. Our hardships belong to the past. You didn't support us then, and now you only seek to save yourself. That's unacceptable. I apologize. I was young and foolish. Please forgive me, John pleaded, his voice tinged with remorse. Those who genuinely regret their actions wouldn't dangle compensation as a bargaining chip. Your selfishness knows no bounds. Please leave. If you return to this house, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities. Wouldn't that further jeopardize your position at the company? Jacob's words struck a chord, prompting John to flee in a panicked frenzy. Thanks to Jacob's intervention, it's unlikely John will darken our doorstep again. We can look forward to peaceful days ahead. Currently, Jacob is focused on completing all his college credits. But once that's accomplished, he plans to treat the entire family to a trip to a hot springs resort. Despite my protests, Jacob insists on repaying our support. If that's his wish, we'll gratefully accept his generosity. Surely, we'll enjoy a wonderful time on that trip.
The flowers arrived moments before HR called. Lilies and orchids, arranged in a crystal vase I'd been eyeing at the boutique downstairs for months. The card read, "Congratulations on the promotion. You earned this." The team. I traced my fingers over the raised lettering, breathing in the sweet scent of victory. 6 years of late nights, perfect presentations, and saying yes to every impossible deadline had finally paid off. Director of Strategic Operations. My new business cards were probably being printed right now. Lucia, there's an urgent meeting request from HR. Audrey's voice crackled through my phone's intercom. They need you immediately. Now? I laughed, still floating. I haven't even changed my email signature yet. They said it's time sensitive. Something in her tone made my stomach twist. The walk to HR felt longer than usual. My heels clicked against the marble floors, each step echoing with a finality I couldn't explain. The flower's perfume still clung to my blazer, but now it felt cloying, almost suffocating. Renee from HR wasn't alone. Gareth, my mentor and boss of 5 years, sat stone-faced beside her. The third chair, usually reserved for union reps or legal, was occupied by Peyton, my best friend, my confidant, the person who'd helped me pick out the suit I was wearing. "Please sit down, Lucia." Renee's voice was professionally neutral. "We've received a serious complaint." The next 20 minutes destroyed everything I'd built. Sexual harassment, abuse of power, hostile work environment. The words fell like bombs, each one obliterating another piece of my reality. Peyton sat there, tears streaming down her face, as she detailed how I'd pressured her, threatened her, made inappropriate advances. "That's impossible," I whispered, but Gareth wouldn't meet my eyes. He'd already decided. They all had. "Given the severity of the allegations, we're placing you on immediate administrative leave pending investigation." Renee slid a document across the table. "We'll need your badge and laptop before you leave." "Peyton," my voice cracked. "Tell them the truth, please." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never noticed before. Behind the tears, behind the trembling lip, satisfaction. Pure, undiluted satisfaction. "I'm so sorry it had to come to this," she said softly. "I just couldn't stay silent anymore." The security escort to my office felt like a walk of shame. Employees I'd managed for years suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. Audrey tried to catch my eye, but I couldn't bear to see pity or doubt there, too. I packed my personal items mechanically. The photo of my mom, my spare shoes, the stupid motivational coffee mug Peyton had given me last Christmas. The flowers went into the trash, their sweetness now bitter as poison. The Uber ride home was a blur. I sat in my living room as darkness fell, still wearing my victory suit, now wrinkled from hours of shocked stillness. My phone buzzed periodically. Probably my lawyer, maybe my sister, possibly reporters. The story would spread fast. These things always did. At 9:47 p.m., an envelope slid under my door. I thought it was a mistake until I saw my name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an eviction notice. My building had a morality clause. The management company had already heard about the allegations. I walked to my window, looking out at the city I'd fought so hard to conquer. 6 years of perfect performance reviews, countless shared secrets and wine nights with Peyton. All those times she'd encouraged me to go for the promotion, helped me prepare for the interviews. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You need to see this." The message contained a single video file. My hands shook as I pressed play. There was Peyton, talking to someone off camera 2 weeks ago in the break room. "Once they announce Lucia's promotion, everything's ready. HR will believe me. They always believe the victim. And when she's gone, guess who's next in line?" I watched it 3 times, each viewing crystallizing something hard and cold in my chest. The flowers, the tears, the perfectly timed complaint. She'd planned it all. My phone buzzed one final time. "Peyton, I really am sorry, Lou, but we both know there can only be one director. Sleep well." I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who'd received congratulatory flowers this morning. That woman died in an HR conference room, betrayed by her best friend. This woman had nothing left to lose, and everything to reclaim. 3 days into my suspension, I found myself staring at the photo from last New Year's Eve. Peyton and I, champagne flutes raised, confetti caught mid-fall around us. Her arm draped over my shoulders, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. I'd framed it because it captured everything I thought we were. Successful, inseparable, unstoppable. Now I could see what I'd missed. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. How her grip on my shoulder looked more possessive than affectionate. My phone buzzed. Another message from HR requesting a formal statement. I'd already drafted and deleted 12 versions, each one sounding more desperate than the last. How do you prove a negative? How do you fight shadows? The knock at my door startled me. I hadn't ordered food, and my family knew to call first. Through the peephole, I saw Eric from across the hall, holding what looked like mail. "This was in my box by mistake," he said when I opened the door. His eyes widened slightly at my appearance. I realized I was still in yesterday's sweats, hair unwashed. "Are you okay? I haven't seen you leaving for work lately." "Just taking some time off," I lied, the words tasting bitter. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I overheard something in the elevator. About allegations? Listen, if you need someone to talk to..." I almost shut the door in his face, but something in his expression stopped me. Concern without judgment. When was the last time anyone had looked at me like that? "Want coffee?" I heard myself asking. 20 minutes later, I was telling him everything. The promotion, the betrayal, the video. He listened without interrupting. occasionally nodding as if pieces were falling into place. "The thing is," he said finally, "this sounds familiar. Too familiar." "What do you mean?" "2 years ago, at my old firm, there was this woman, always friendly, always helpful. Then suddenly, a junior associate accused her of harassment. The details were different, but the pattern—" He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old emails. "Her name was Sarah Martinez. The accusation destroyed her career, and guess who got her position?" My coffee had gone cold. "Peyton?" She went by a different name then, but yeah, same person. The room tilted slightly. I grabbed my laptop, fingers shaking as I typed. There it was, buried in a local business journal from 2 years ago. A small mention of staff changes at Eric's old firm, Sarah Martinez's resignation, Peyton Adams's promotion. Why didn't anyone connect the dots? She's smart, changes jobs every few years, probably uses different tactics each time. He leaned forward. "But here's what's interesting. Sarah fought back, hard. There were documents, recordings. Then suddenly she dropped everything and moved across the country. No one knew why." My phone buzzed again. Audrey this time. "Need to talk. Coffee shop around the corner. Important." "I have to go," I told Eric. "But thank you for everything." "Be careful," he called as I left. People like that, they always have contingency plans. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Audrey sat in the back, nervously shredding a napkin. She jumped when I approached. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "But you need to know. Peyton's been meeting with Gareth. Private meetings, after hours. And yesterday, I overheard her on the phone. She said everything was proceeding exactly as planned and mentioned something about when the board votes next week." The pieces clicked. The board meeting, where they'd formally approve my promotion, or now my replacement. "There's more," Audrey continued. "Remember that client report you submitted last month? The one with the projection models? Someone altered the numbers after you submitted it. If anyone checks the records, they'll find evidence I was incompetent." I finished. Perfect justification for passing me over. Back home, I paced my apartment, mind racing. Sarah Martinez had evidence but gave up. Why? What had Peyton done to silence her? A soft thud at my door made me freeze. Another envelope had been slid underneath. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "You're not the first, but you could be the last. SM." I plugged in the drive with trembling hands. Dozens of files appeared. Emails, photos, voice recordings. A complete record of what Peyton had done to Sarah and apparently others before her. My phone lit up with a text from Peyton. "Dinner soon? I miss you. We should talk about your statement to HR. I'm sure we can work something out." I stared at the message, then at the USB drive glowing on my screen. Sarah had gathered all this evidence but never used it. She'd had everything she needed to expose Peyton. So what had stopped her? And more importantly, what would stop me? The USB drive's contents kept me up all night. 5 women, 5 careers, 5 different cities. Each time, Peyton had played the victim, climbing over their ruined reputations. Sarah's documentation was meticulous. Emails, recordings, even surveillance photos showing Peyton meeting with key players before each accusation. But the last file was different. A video dated 2 days before Sarah disappeared. Peyton's voice, soft and threatening. "Your daughter's kindergarten on Oak Street looks lovely. It would be terrible if someone reported concerns about her home life." My hands shook as I closed the laptop. No wonder Sarah ran. Dawn found me at my kitchen counter, surrounded by notes and timelines. The pattern was clear now. Peyton didn't just destroy careers. She destroyed lives, and she never acted alone. My phone buzzed. "Ellie, Peyton's sister. Can we meet, please? It's about what's happening." I almost declined, but Ellie had always been different from Peyton, softer, more genuine. Maybe she knew something useful. We met at a small park across town. Ellie looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes matching mine. I found these in Peyton's apartment while she was at work, she said, hands trembling as she passed me a folder. I've been cleaning for her since everything happened. I thought maybe I'd find something to help you. Inside were printouts of emails between Peyton and Gareth dating back months. Their plan laid bare, how she'd manipulate HR, which board members to influence, even a timeline for my replacement. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks. Because she did it before, to our stepsister Rachel. Destroyed her life with lies, then acted devastated when Rachel... She couldn't finish. When Rachel what? Killed herself. Ellie's voice broke. 6 years ago, Peyton said it wasn't her fault, that Rachel was unstable. I believed her then, but after seeing what she's doing to you, my throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Ellie wiped her eyes. Peyton's having dinner with the board chairman tonight. At La Maison, she's making her final move. I left the park with my mind racing. The emails proved conspiracy, but they weren't enough. I needed something irrefutable, something even Peyton couldn't spin. Eric was waiting outside my apartment. I talked to Sarah, he said without preamble. She's willing to help, but only if you can guarantee her daughter's safety. How? She says you'll need this. He handed me a small recording device. It's what she used to gather evidence. The quality is incredible, picks up whispers from across a room. An idea started forming. La Maison has a bar overlooking their private dining rooms. Lucia? Eric's face clouded with concern. Be careful, if Peyton catches you. She won't. I checked my watch. 3 hours until dinner service. But I need your help. La Maison's bar was dimly lit, perfect for eavesdropping. I sat nursing a club soda, the recording device hidden in my purse, positioned just so. Eric was 2 tables away, pretending to work on his laptop. At 7:30, Peyton arrived with the chairman. They were seated at a corner table below. Perfect. The allegations are concerning, the chairman was saying, but her history of performance issues... I tried to mentor her, Peyton's voice dripped false sympathy. But the harassment started small, little comments, touches. When I refused her advances, I gripped my glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Below, Peyton continued spinning her web of lies. Then something unexpected happened. Gareth arrived, joining their table. He looked nervous, sweating slightly. The board meets tomorrow, he said. Everything's arranged, but... He glanced around. Are we sure about this? Lucia's work has always been... Having doubts? Peyton's tone turned icy. Remember those expense reports you asked me to adjust? The ones hiding your little gambling problem? I'm sure the board would love to see those, too. My breath caught. The recording device hummed softly, capturing every word. Of course not, Gareth mumbled. No doubts. I'd heard enough. As I stood to leave, my purse knocked over my glass. The crash seemed deafening. Peyton's head snapped up. Our eyes met across the dim space. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, that same satisfied smile from the HR meeting. I fled the restaurant, Eric close behind. Outside, my phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. Lovely evening for a drink, isn't it? We should chat about what you heard. Tomorrow morning, my office. Come alone, or Sarah's daughter gets a very unfortunate visit. But this time, her threat didn't fill me with fear, because I had the recording. And more importantly, I finally understood something. Peyton wasn't just confident, she was careless, and careless people make mistakes. I spent the night listening to the recording over and over, each playback revealing new layers of Peyton's manipulation. The way she'd positioned herself as both victim and savior, how she'd weaponized Gareth's weakness, the casual cruelty in her voice when she mentioned Sarah's daughter. At 3 a.m., Audrey called. "Don't come to the office," she whispered. "Peyton's got security waiting. She's telling everyone you've been harassing her at restaurants, stalking her." Of course she was. Did she mention the board meeting? "It's been moved up. 9 a.m. tomorrow." Audrey paused. "Lucia, whatever you're planning, she's always one step ahead." "Not anymore." I played her the recording. Silence stretched across the line. "Holy shit," Audrey finally breathed. "But what about Sarah's daughter?" "I'm handling it." I wasn't sure how yet, but I couldn't let another child be used as leverage. "I need you to do something for me, though." "Anything. Get me everything you can on Gareth's expenses. Every report, every receipt. And Audrey, be careful. Don't let anyone see you looking." Dawn brought Eric with coffee and news. "Sarah's daughter is safe. I had a friend in private security move them to a safe house last night." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. I couldn't risk." "There's something else." He set down his coffee. "I did some digging into Rachel's suicide. The police report doesn't match what Ellie told you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Rachel didn't kill herself. She disappeared. Her case is still open." The implications hit me like a physical blow. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, memories of Peyton's satisfied smile mixing with thoughts of Rachel's fate. When I emerged, Eric was on his phone, frowning. "Audrey just sent these, Gareth's expense reports. We spent an hour going through them. The gambling cover-up was obvious once you knew what to look for. Fake client meetings, inflated dinner receipts, but something else caught my eye. Look at these dates," I pointed. 3 large withdrawals, right before each of Peyton's previous victories. Eric's eyes widened. "She's been blackmailing him longer than we thought." "No." I studied the pattern. "She's been paying him. He's not just complicit. He's her partner." My phone buzzed. Peyton. "Tick-tock, 1 hour until our chat. Bring the recording." I looked at Eric. "I need one more favor." The office lobby felt surreal. Empty desk where security usually sat. No sign of the promised ambush. The elevator ride to Peyton's floor was endless. She waited in her new office, my old office, looking perfectly composed. "The recording, please." "First, call off whatever you're planning for Sarah's daughter." Peyton laughed. "Oh, honey, I already know they're gone. Quite the hero, aren't you? Saving the day?" She held out her hand. "The recording." I handed over the device. She immediately dropped it into a glass of water. "Now, let's discuss your resignation. I've drafted a lovely statement about your mental health struggles." "Before we do," I interrupted, "explain something. The expense reports show you paying Gareth, but Rachel's case shows something else, doesn't it?" Her smile faltered slightly. "I don't know what you mean." 3 days before Rachel disappeared, Gareth withdrew $10,000, the exact amount he withdrew before Sarah was threatened, before each of your other victims was silenced. "You can't prove anything." "Maybe not." I pulled out my phone, but Eric just sent everything, the reports, the recordings, Rachel's case files, to every board member and the police. The color drained from her face. "You're bluffing." My phone buzzed. "Audrey, police just arrived. Gareth's being questioned." "Check your email," I said quietly. "It's all there. Every pattern, every payment, every connection. The board meets in 20 minutes. Want to guess what they'll discuss first?" Peyton lunged for her computer, fingers shaking as she logged in. I watched her face as she saw her carefully constructed world begin to crumble. "We could have been great together," she whispered. "Why couldn't you just let me win?" "Because you never wanted to win." I stood to leave. "You wanted to destroy." Her laugh stopped me at the door. You think this is over? You think you've won? Her eyes held something dangerous. Rachel thought she'd won too. I turned back. What happened to Rachel? Wouldn't you like to know? Peyton's smile returned, sharp as broken glass. Better watch your back, Lucia. Some victories come with unexpected costs. Outside, police cars surrounded the building. Gareth was being led out in handcuffs, but Peyton's words echoed in my head. What had happened to Rachel? And what would happen to me if I didn't find out first? The police interview room was colder than I expected. Detective Morris sat across from me, spreading photos across the metal table. Rachel's face smiled up from each one. Graduation, family gatherings, her last known photograph. Tell me again about your conversation with Peyton, she said. I repeated Peyton's words, watching the detective's expression shift. You think she was confessing? I think she was threatening. Morris gathered the photos. Rachel's case went cold because we couldn't connect the dots. Now we have Gareth talking, but he claims he only handled money. Says he never knew what happened after. My phone buzzed, Ellie requesting an urgent meeting. I almost ignored it until I saw her second message. Found something in Rachel's old things. Come now. The detective noticed my expression. Something wrong? Maybe a lead. I showed her the texts. Want to come with me? Ellie's apartment was in a run-down complex across town. She opened the door looking worse than at the park. Pale, jittery, constantly checking over her shoulder. I've been going through boxes in storage, she said, leading us to a cluttered living room. Found Rachel's old journal. The last entry. She handed me a worn notebook. The final pages detailed Rachel's discovery of similar patterns in Peyton's past. Names, dates, companies, a trail of destruction going back further than we knew. But the last entry made my blood freeze. Meeting P tonight. Have proof of everything. This ends now. That was the night she disappeared, Ellie whispered. Detective Morris studied the journal. Any idea where this meeting was supposed to happen? No, but... Ellie's phone chimed. Her face went white. It's Peyton. She knows I'm talking to you. Says she's coming over. How long? Morris was already calling for backup. 5 minutes. She's nearby. We need to go. I started gathering the journal pages. No. Ellie's voice was suddenly firm. Let her come. I'm tired of running from her. Morris positioned herself in the kitchen, out of sight. I sat with Ellie, heart pounding as footsteps approached. The door opened without a knock. Peyton stood there, immaculate despite everything, smile fixed in place. Family meeting without me? Her eyes locked onto the journal. Oh, Ellie, still obsessing over ancient history? It's not history if it never ended. Ellie's voice shook. What did you do to Rachel? The same thing I'll have to do to you now. Peyton's hand moved toward her purse. You never could keep your mouth shut. Like you couldn't shut Rachel's? I stood slowly. How many others are there, Peyton? How many bodies? Her laugh was hollow. Bodies? Please, I'm not some TV villain. Rachel was a problem, yes, but she's perfectly fine, living her new life far away, just like you'll have to do. You're lying. Ellie pulled out her phone. I found this too. She played a video, Rachel, tearful, recording herself the night she disappeared. If anything happens to me, Peyton did it. She's threatened others before. There's a cabin in... The gunshot was deafening in the small apartment. Detective Morris tackled Peyton as the gun clattered to the floor. I rushed to Ellie, who clutched her bleeding shoulder, eyes wide with shock. You actually shot me, she whispered. Your own sister? Peyton thrashed against the handcuffs. She's lying. That video is fake. I never... Save it. Morris yanked her up. We've got your gun, the video, and attempted murder witnesses. Start thinking about a plea deal. As paramedics worked on Ellie, she grabbed my hand. The cabin. Rachel's video mentioned Miller's Lake. There's only one rental cabin there. My phone buzzed. Eric. Just found property records. Guess who owned a cabin at Miller's Lake 5 years ago? Gareth. I showed Morris the message. She nodded grimly. I'll get a search warrant, but Lucia. She glanced at Peyton being led away. Watch yourself. People like her, they have contingency plans, and she's not done yet. Through the window, I caught Peyton's eye as she was placed in a police car. She wasn't smiling anymore, but something in her expression, a cold certainty, made me shiver. The cabin might have answers about Rachel, but Peyton's words from earlier echoed in my mind. Some victories come with unexpected costs. What would this one cost me? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You're getting warmer, but some secrets should stay buried. Last chance to walk away. I looked at Ellie, pale from blood loss, but alive. At the journal detailing years of destruction. At the police car carrying Peyton away. Walking away wasn't an option anymore. Whatever waited at that cabin, I had to know. Miller's Lake loomed dark and still in the pre-dawn light. Eric and I sat in his car, watching police vehicles converge on the cabin's overgrown driveway. Detective Morris had insisted we stay back until they cleared the scene. You don't have to be here, I told him. Yes, I do. He handed me coffee from our third gas station stop. Someone should witness whatever we find. Morris approached our car, face grim. We're ready, but Lucia, it's bad in there. The cabin's interior hit me with the smell of abandonment and something else, something chemical beneath the dust and decay. Flashlight beams caught cobwebs and scattered leaves, but the basement door showed fresh scratches around the lock. We found these upstairs. Morris handed me a stack of notebooks. Rachel's handwriting filled the pages. Dates, times, conversations, evidence she'd gathered about Peyton. The final entry stopped mid-sentence. There's more. Morris led us downstairs. The basement had been converted into some kind of office. Filing cabinets lined one wall, their drawers hanging open. A desk held an ancient computer, its screen cracked. Look at this, Eric called from a corner. A corkboard hung there, covered in photos and newspaper clippings. Not just Rachel's case, but others. Women whose careers and lives had been destroyed. Red string connected their stories to Peyton, to Gareth, to companies and dates. Rachel was building a case, I realized. She found a pattern going back. 15 years, Morris finished, and not just harassment claims, missing persons, suspicious accidents, all connected to your friend's rise to power. My phone buzzed. Audrey, Peyton's asking for you, says she'll only talk to you. Don't, Eric warned. It's a trap. But Morris was already nodding. We need her confession. If she'll talk to you, the police station felt different this time. Colder. Peyton sat handcuffed to the interview table, still somehow looking polished despite her jumpsuit. I knew you'd come, she smiled. We're too connected not to have this conversation. Where's Rachel? Getting right to it? No catching up first? She leaned forward. How's my sister? That shoulder wound looked nasty. I started to leave. Wait. Her smile faltered. I'll tell you everything. But first, you need to understand why. Why you destroyed lives. Why you shot your own sister. Why I had to be the best, the strongest, the survivor. Something dark flickered in her eyes. You think Rachel was the first person to threaten me? To try taking what I'd earned? You earned nothing. You stole everything. I protected myself. She slammed her hands on the table. Every single person I took down was going to expose me, report me, ruin me. I couldn't let that happen, not again. Again? Her laugh was bitter. You never looked into my childhood, did you? Never wondered why I changed my name? What happened to my real family? Behind the observation glass, I knew Morris was taking notes. Rachel found out, Peyton continued. She traced my past, threatened to expose everything, not just the recent stuff, but the original incident, the one that started it all. What incident? Check the cabin's computer. Rachel backed everything up there, all my secrets, all my reasons. She sat back. But ask yourself this, once you know, can you ever feel safe again? A commotion outside interrupted us. Eric burst in, face pale. They found something at the cabin, hidden room behind the filing cabinets. Tick-tock, Peyton sang as I rushed out. Better hurry. The hidden room was small, barely larger than a closet, but its walls told a story. Hundreds of photos, documents, newspaper clippings. A teenage Peyton, under a different name, standing over something just out of frame. Reports of a family tragedy. Records of name changes, new identities. There's more, Morris pointed to a laptop we'd missed earlier. Rachel downloaded everything before. Before what? She handed me a final photo. Rachel, unconscious, being loaded into a car. Gareth at the wheel. The timestamp matched her disappearance. My phone lit up. Unknown number? Now you know too much. History repeats itself. Check your car. Eric grabbed my arm. Wait! But I was already running to the parking lot. Under my car, barely visible, was a small blinking light. Bomb! I screamed as Morris tackled me away. The explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying. As smoke cleared, I saw my car reduced to twisted metal. Back inside, Peyton was gone. Her handcuffs lay empty on the table. On the table was a note. You wanted truth? Come find me where it all began, alone, or Rachel won't be the only one who disappears. Morris read the security footage report. Guard found unconscious. She had help escaping. But who? Eric asked. I stared at the photos from the hidden room, at teenage Peyton's face and what lay just out of frame. Someone who knows her original story, I realized. Someone who's been helping her all along. And I knew exactly where she wanted me to go. The abandoned children's home loomed against the darkening sky, its Victorian architecture twisted by decades of neglect. This was where Peyton's original story began, where a 12-year-old girl with a different name had first learned to destroy lives. You shouldn't go in alone. Eric's voice crackled through my earpiece. He and Morris waited with backup teams nearby, hidden. We don't know who helped her escape. Yes, we do. I studied the photo from the hidden room one last time. Teenage Peyton standing over something just out of frame. No, someone. A woman's hand visible at the edge, wearing a distinctive ring, the same ring I'd seen earlier today. It's Renee from HR. She was here back then. She's been protecting Peyton all along. The front door creaked open at my touch. Dust motes swirled in my flashlight beam, dancing through air thick with mold and memory. A child's shoe lay abandoned in the hallway, somehow more disturbing than any horror movie setup. Up here, Peyton's voice drifted down from above. Time to finish our story. I climbed stairs that groaned under each step. The second floor stretched into darkness, but light flickered from a room at the end of the hall. Peyton sat in what must have been an office, looking perfectly at home among the decay. Renee stood beside her, hand resting on a filing cabinet. Welcome to where it all began, Peyton smiled. Where Renee taught me everything I needed to know about survival. Where's Rachel? Still focused on the wrong questions. Peyton stood, moving like a predator. Rachel was just another threat, like all the others, like you've become. You mean like your family was? I watched her smile falter. I saw the records, the suspicious fire, The insurance payout that went missing. Careful, Renee warned, but Peyton waved her off. My family? She laughed. They were the first ones who tried to control me, to stop me from reaching my potential. Renee saw what they couldn't, how special I was, how strong I could become. She was extraordinary. Renee's voice held a mother's pride. The others here, they were weak, victims. But Peyton understood what I taught her, that power means never being vulnerable again. So you helped her stage the fire, I said, helped her disappear, create a new identity. I helped her become who she was meant to be. Renee moved to block the door, just like I helped her deal with Rachel, with Sarah, with all the others who threatened to expose her. Where are they? Safe, Peyton smiled. Somewhere very quiet, very permanent. She pulled out a gun, not police issue like before, personal. Like where you're going. The police know everything, I said. The evidence will burn again. Renee produced a gas can, along with any remaining questions about poor, troubled Lucia's final moments. My earpiece crackled. Eric's warning cut off mid-word. Signal jammers? Peyton explained. No backup coming, no witnesses. Just us, finishing what you started when you refused to stay down. I thought of Rachel's journal entries, Sarah's desperate protection of her daughter, Ellie's blood on her apartment floor. You're wrong, I said quietly. This isn't finishing what I started. It's ending what you began right here, in this room, when you convinced a scared little girl that cruelty was strength. Shut up. Peyton's hand tightened on the gun. That's why you keep coming back here, isn't it? Why you brought me here? Because somewhere inside, that scared little girl is still crying. The gunshot deafened me. Plaster exploded beside my head. Next one won't miss, Peyton snarled. Any last words? Just 3, I smiled. Check your phone. Her screen lit up with an incoming video call from Rachel. Hi, sis, Rachel's voice filled the room. Surprise. Impossible, Renee whispered. We put me in a medically induced coma? Had me transferred to a private facility? Rachel's laugh was cold. Guess who owns that facility now? While you were busy with Lucia, federal agents were freeing your other permanent guests. Say hi to the cameras, by the way. Tiny red lights blinked from corners I hadn't noticed. No. Peyton turned the gun toward the nearest camera. No. The door burst open. Morris led the charge, officers flooding in. Renee went down fighting. But Peyton just crumpled, that scared little girl finally visible beneath the monster she'd become. Rachel's been working with us for months, Morris explained later, leading them both away. Once she woke up, she never stopped building the case, just needed someone to flush them out. I touched my earpiece. You knew. We all did. Eric's voice was gentle. Had to make your reactions genuine. I'm sorry. Outside, dawn painted the old building in soft light. It looked smaller somehow, less threatening. My phone buzzed one last time. Rachel, thank you for finishing what I started. Drink soon. I stared at the message, thinking of all the lives Peyton had twisted, all the pain she'd caused, and for the first time since this began, I felt something close to peace. The interview room felt different from this side of the table. Peyton sat across from me, prison jumpsuit replacing her designer clothes, eyes hollow without their usual predatory gleam. Why did you want to see me? I asked. To understand. Her voice was hoarse. How did you do it? Stay good, even after everything I did to you? I studied her face, really looked at the person behind the manipulation and malice. I didn't stay good. I wanted to destroy you. Nearly lost myself doing it. But you didn't. No, because that would have made me you. She flinched as if I'd struck her. The others won't talk to me. Rachel, Ellie, even Renee's claiming I manipulated her. Didn't you? I thought I was the strong one. Her laugh held no humor. The survivor, but you survived without becoming this. A guard appeared at the door. Time's up. I stood to leave, but Peyton called after me. There's one more thing you should know, one last secret. Of course there was. There would always be one more secret with her. The promotion, she said. You actually earned it. I saw the board's original decision. You were always their first choice. Her smile turned bitter. That's what really drove me crazy. You didn't need to destroy anyone to succeed. You just deserved it. The sunlight outside the prison felt surreal. Eric waited by his car. You okay? He asked. No. I handed him the visitor's pass. But I will be. My phone buzzed. Audrey calling. The board wants to meet. Now. The office looked unchanged, as if the past weeks had happened in another universe. Employees nodded as I passed, their faces showing something new. Not pity anymore. Something closer to respect. The boardroom doors opened to reveal not just the directors, but Rachel, Sarah, and other faces I recognized from Peyton's trail of destruction. Women who'd rebuilt their lives from the ashes she'd left behind. Ms. Fuller, the chairman began, we've reviewed everything. The evidence you gathered, the testimonies, and your original work record. I thought of Peyton's final revelation. I know about the promotion, that it was meant to be mine. Yes, but this isn't about that position anymore. He slid a document across the table. We're creating a new division, ethics and employee advocacy. Given your unique experience, we believe you're the perfect choice to lead it. I stared at the offer letter. The salary was higher than the original promotion, the responsibility greater. Why me? Rachel spoke up. Because you didn't just expose Peyton. You showed us how to fight back without losing ourselves. We'd like you to teach others to do the same, Sarah added, to recognize the warning signs, to protect themselves and each other. My phone buzzed again. Ellie. At the hospital, doctor says shoulder's healing well. Coffee soon? Then another message. Eric. Whatever you decide, I'm here. And another. Audrey. They're waiting for your answer, but so is your desk, your choice. I looked around the room at these women who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger, at the offer letter that represented not just success, but purpose. I have conditions, I said. The chairman nodded. Name them. Full audit of all harassment claims for the past decade, independent oversight committee, and I met Rachel's eyes. We find everyone else Peyton silenced. Everyone Renee helped hide. We bring them all home. Done. Outside the boardroom, I paused at my old office. Through the window, I could still see the spot where the flowers had sat that morning that felt like a lifetime ago. The day everything shattered. But standing here now, I realized something Peyton never understood. Sometimes things need to shatter so we can rebuild them stronger, better. My phone lit up one last time. Unknown number. For a moment, my heart stopped. But the message wasn't a threat. It was a thank you from someone else Peyton had tried to break. Another survivor reaching out. I saved the number. Tomorrow we'd start rebuilding. Today I had coffee dates with a healing sister, a supportive neighbor, and a friend who'd stood by me through the darkness. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking forward.
Guess what? We had a baby. Come celebrate with us. Vanessa's voice dripped with insincerity as it came through the phone, jolting me out of the quiet comfort of my living room. My fingers tightened around the phone. The audacity of this woman never ceased to amaze me. Vanessa, I said slowly, forcing a calmness into my voice that I did not feel. Congratulations. Thanks, Emily. It's going to be this Saturday. You have to come. It wouldn't be the same without you. Her cheerful tone grated against my nerves, but I wasn't about to let her see that. "I'll check our calendar," I replied, non-committal. The last thing I wanted was to celebrate anything with Vanessa, but I knew avoiding her completely was impossible. "Perfect. See you there." She hung up before I could respond. I let out a deep sigh and dropped the phone onto the couch. Derek, who must have noticed the tension on my face, walked over from the kitchen. "What's wrong?" he asked, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's Vanessa," I said, unable to prevent the bitterness creeping into my voice. "She wants us to come to a celebration for their new baby." Derek's expression darkened. "She's something else, isn't she? She stole my fiancé without a second thought, and now she wants me to celebrate with her?" I said, more to myself than to Derek. The past I had tried so hard to move on from reared its ugly head yet again. "We don't have to go if you don't want to," Derek suggested, wrapping his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace, closing my eyes and trying to let the warmth of his touch soothe me. "No," I said after a moment. "We'll go. I need to show her that I've moved on, that she didn't break me." Derek kissed the top of my head. "I'll be right there with you." Saturday arrived quicker than I would have liked. As we drove to Vanessa and Brian's home, memories of my past relationship with Brian flooded my mind. I pushed them aside, focusing on the present. Derek's presence beside me was an anchor. We reached the house, a picture-perfect suburban home. Vanessa had always wanted the most desirable things. Her attention to superficial details never changed. As we walked up to the front door, Vanessa was there to greet us. "Emily, Derek, I am so glad you could make it." She hugged me stiffly, an overly sweet smile plastered on her face. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my own smile not quite reaching my eyes. Brian was inside, holding the baby, a proud smile on his face. Seeing him after all this time brought back a flood of emotions, but I held my head high and walked over to him. "Congratulations, Brian." "Thanks, Emily. It means a lot that you're here," he said, his smile genuine. I could see a flicker of the man I used to love in his eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of our past. Derek stayed close by, his presence a constant reassurance. Vanessa fluttered around, playing the perfect hostess, but I could sense the tension beneath her polished exterior. Near the end of the party, Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen while I was getting a drink. "So how's married life treating you?" she asked. "Better than I could have ever imagined," I replied honestly, a genuine smile on my face this time. She studied me for a moment before speaking again. "You've really moved on, haven't you?" "Yes, Vanessa," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "I have." A shadow crossed her face, but she quickly replaced it with another fake smile. "That's good to hear." Derek appeared in the doorway then, holding my coat. "You ready to go, Emily?" "Yes, I am," I said, walking over to him and slipping my arm through his. I looked back at Vanessa one last time. "Goodbye, Vanessa." As we walked out of the house, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced the ghosts of my past, and I was stronger for it. Derek squeezed my hand, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. Back home, the drive still lingering in my mind, Derek sat beside me, warm and silent. I knew what I had to do. The past few days had stirred something inside me, a need to confront the memories I'd buried. I was sitting at the dining table when it hit me, Brian's blue eyes, his light laughter, and how it all began. "Just a small volunteer event downtown. Emily," he had said, extending a hand as we stood by the food stand. "I'm Brian. Nice to finally meet you in person." His smile was genuine, and his eyes lit up when he saw me. We had exchanged emails for months, brainstorming ways to support local shelters. In person, he was even more charming. We clicked instantly, sharing an easy camaraderie. As the months went by, our meetings turned into dates. One cool autumn evening, Brian and I stood on a rickety bridge overlooking a small, serene creek. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. My heart raced. As he opened the box, the glint of the diamond ring caught the moonlight. "Emily, will you marry me?" His voice was soft, hopeful, as if the world hung on my answer. I had said yes. It had felt right, destined even. Until Vanessa. Vanessa had shown up at our engagement party, uninvited but with that signature smile. "Ems, long time no see," she had said, pulling me into a hug. Despite her cheerful demeanor, an unsettling chill always accompanied Vanessa. Derek wandered into the room, breaking my reverie. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, sitting across from me. Just remembering how it all started, I replied. I'd like to hear it, if you're willing to share, he said gently. All right, I said, drawing a deep breath. Vanessa had been the friend everyone warned you about, always looking for ways to undermine, subtly belittle. She had a knack for finding weaknesses and exploiting them. It was no wonder she had wormed her way into Brian's life. One afternoon, I had suggested a double date, introduce Vanessa to Brian, try to mend old fences. But as weeks passed, Brian seemed increasingly distant. You're working late again? I'd asked him one night, a hint of frustration in my voice. Yeah, just a lot going on at the office, he replied, not meeting my eyes. The strain between us grew, but I wanted to believe in him, in us, until one evening, by sheer chance, I stumbled upon them. They were at the local park, hidden away but not invisible. Brian was in Vanessa's embrace, her lips pressed close to his ear. You're so much more exciting than Emily. His voice was low, but the words seared into me. Vanessa's laughter followed. I knew you'd realize how boring she is. I felt the ground fall beneath me, I said to Derek now, my voice trembling. Derek reached over, taking my hand in his. And yet here you are, stronger than ever. I nodded. It wasn't easy, but it made me who I am now. I believe in you, Emily. We'll face whatever comes next together. His resolve steadied me. With Derek by my side, I felt a new surge of strength. I would see this through, and Vanessa would see just how strong I had become. The next day, as I sorted through my old photos, I found one of Brian and me at a small cafe. It was from the day I introduced him to Vanessa. The three of us, laughing and oblivious to the chaos that lay ahead. I remember that day vividly. It was the first time the two of them met. We were at the Red Maple Cafe, a quaint place downtown known for its coffee and pastries. Brian, this is Vanessa, I said cheerfully, motioning to her as she walked in. Vanessa flashed her charming smile, and I felt a pang of unease. Nice to meet you, Vanessa, Brian said, shaking her hand. Likewise, Brian. Emily talks about you all the time, Vanessa replied smoothly. We settled at a corner table. Brian and Vanessa started chatting about everything, movies, travel, work. Vanessa had a way of making people open up, making them feel like they were the only person in the room. I tried to join in, but it became clear I was more an observer than a participant. Weeks passed, and Brian began to grow distant. He blamed it on work stress. I didn't want to believe anything else. One night, as he left for another supposed late-night meeting, I decided to follow him. Under the dim streetlights, I trailed his car until he stopped at a park. He got out, and there she was, Vanessa, waiting for him. I watched from a distance, hiding in the shadows. They talked, but soon their conversation turned into an embrace, and then a kiss. You're so much more exciting than Emily, Brian said, running his fingers through her hair. Vanessa laughed softly. I knew you'd realize how boring she is. My heart shattered. The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my gut. I stumbled back, trying to leave quietly, but stepped on a branch. What was that? Brian snapped, looking around. I ducked behind a tree, holding my breath. After a moment, they seemed to shrug it off, and I took the chance to escape. My world crashed down around me that night. I went to our apartment and waited, tears streaming down my face. When Brian came home, I confronted him. So, late night at work, huh? I said bitterly. He looked startled. Emily, it's not what you think. Save it, Brian. I cut him off, my voice shaking. I saw you with her. How long has this been going on? He ran a hand through his hair, eyes avoiding mine. I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't mean for this to happen. How could you do this to me? To us? Anger mixed with heartbreak in my voice. It just happened, he said weakly. I felt something with Vanessa that I didn't feel with me. I interrupted. Spare me, Brian. You're pathetic. He looked like he wanted to say more, but I couldn't take it. I grabbed my purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind me. I called Vanessa the next day. We need to talk, I said coldly. Sure, Emily. Should I bring coffee? Her tone was mocking. I met her at the cafe. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Why, Vanessa? She shrugged, a smirk playing on her lips. Because I could, Emily, and because you trust too easily. You're vile, I said, my voice low. Maybe, but I'm good at it, she replied with satisfaction. That was the last day I spoke to either of them. Until now. As I placed the photo back into the box, Derek came into the room. You all right? He asked, concern in his eyes. Yeah, I said, taking his hand. I'm ready to face what's next. Remember, I'm with you every step of the way, he reassured me. With his support, I knew I could confront the darkest parts of my past and come out stronger on the other side. I woke up the next morning feeling drained yet resolute. The confrontation last night had dredged up old wounds, but it also gave me a newfound determination. It was time to rebuild. The first step was to get out of the house. I threw on a comfortable pair of jeans and a sweater, and Derek suggested we go for a walk to clear our minds. We strolled down the bustling streets, eventually finding ourselves at a small, cozy cafe. "I could use a coffee," Derek said, smiling at me. "Sounds good," I replied. As we sat at a corner table, I glanced around and noticed a familiar face. Derek must have seen my expression change. "What's up?" he asked. "It's Brian," I said quietly, motioning with my eyes. He was sitting alone, staring into a cup of coffee. The sight of him brought back a flood of emotions, but I kept my composure. "Do you want to leave?" Derek asked, ready to whisk me away at a moment's notice. "No," I said firmly. "I need to face this." I walked over to Brian, each step deliberate and steady. He looked up, eyes widening in surprise. "Emily." "Brian," I said, taking a seat across from him. I'm sorry," he stammered, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I'm not here for apologies," I said simply. "I just want to understand why." Brian looked down, fiddling with the handle of his cup. "I don't have a good excuse, Emily. I was selfish. Vanessa was different, new. I know it's no justification." "No, it's not," I replied bluntly. "You knew what we had meant to me, and yet you chose to throw it all away." He nodded, a look of regret etched on his face. "I know, and I've regretted it every day since." "Does Vanessa know you feel this way?" I asked, curious about the dynamics of their relationship now. He hesitated, then sighed. "Vanessa doesn't care about how I feel. She never has. It's always been about her." I studied him for a moment. The man sitting before me was a shadow of the person I once loved. "And yet you stayed with her." "Leaving her now would ruin everything," he said quietly. "My career, my reputation. She knows too much." I could see the fear in his eyes. Vanessa had a grip on him tighter than I'd imagined. "Brian," I said softly, "you deserve better than to live in fear." He shook his head, clearly defeated. "I don't know if I can ever get out." I stood up, determined to face my future without looking back. "That's your choice to make, Brian, but I won't be a part of it." I walked back to Derek, who had watched the whole exchange from a distance. "How did it go?" he asked, eyes filled with concern. "I think it's time to stop dwelling on the past," I said with a newfound clarity. Derek nodded. "Sounds like a good plan." Days passed, and I focused on my work and building a life with Derek. It was during a business seminar that my new chapter truly began. I met Derek again, though this time as partners running our own startup. He was speaking about innovation when our eyes met across the room. "Building something new requires vision and partnership," he concluded, stepping down from the podium. I approached him, confidence restored. "Great speech, Derek," I said, a genuine smile lighting up my face. "Thanks, Emily. We make a good team, don't we?" he replied, returning my smile. "We do. Here's to new beginnings," I said, holding up my coffee cup. "To new beginnings," he echoed, clinking his cup against mine. As we walked out together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, Derek and I would face them hand in hand. The past had shaped me, but it wouldn't define me. I was ready for whatever came next. The call from Vanessa lingered in my mind, but I knew attending their gathering was the first step in facing my demons. Derek was supportive. "Together, we'll show her you can't be broken," he said one evening as we planned our approach. "I won't let her get the best of me," I replied, my resolve hardening. The night before the visit, we sat on the living room couch, going through our plan. "Derek, she'll try to provoke us. We need to keep calm, no matter what." "I'll be right there with you," he reassured, holding my gaze. The day arrived. As we parked outside Vanessa and Brian's lavish suburban home, my heart raced. Derek squeezed my hand. "You ready?" "Yes," I replied, taking a deep breath before we walked to the door. Vanessa greeted us with that overly sweet smile. "Emily, Derek, come in," she chirped, but her eyes were calculating. I could see the gears turning in her head. Brian approached, a drink in hand. "It's been a long time, Emily." "Yes, it has," I replied coolly, meeting his gaze briefly before looking away. The room was filled with guests, laughter, and chatter. Vanessa played the perfect hostess, but there was an edge to her actions. She fluttered between guests, but her eyes kept darting to me. Derek and I mingled, making polite conversation. As the evening wore on, Vanessa approached me, a faux friendly smile plastered on her face. "Emily, can we privately?" "Sure," I said, maintaining a calm exterior as I followed her to a quieter corner. "You've moved on, I see," Vanessa said, her tone laced with insincerity. "I have," I replied steadily. "Good for you," her eyes narrowed. "But let's be real, you came here to prove something, didn't you?" I met her gaze head on. "I came to show you that I'm stronger than you think." "We'll see about that," she said, a sinister smile crossing her lips. She reached into a nearby drawer and pulled out a small recorder. "I have something for you," she said, pressing play. Brian's voice crackled through the speaker. "Vanessa, you're right. Emily was too trusting, too naive." My stomach churned, but I kept my face impassive. "Nice trick, Vanessa," I commented dryly. She leaned closer. "I always knew you were too soft for this world, but look where I am now." Before I could respond, Derek walked up. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his eyes locking on Vanessa's. "Perfect timing," I said, smiling at him. Vanessa's eyes widened. "He really is your husband?" Derek extended his hand. "Derek, CEO of Greenleaf Inc. Nice to meet you," he said smoothly. Vanessa stumbled back, shock and realization crossing her face. "Is this for real?" "Yes, Vanessa," I said, satisfaction dripping from my words. "Very real." At that moment, Brian walked over, sensing the tension. "What's going on here?" Vanessa tried to regain her composure, but it was too late. Derek turned to Brian. "We were just discussing how integrity is key in both personal and business relationships." Brian's eyes flicked between us, uncertainty clouding his face. "Vanessa?" he questioned, looking at her warily. She opened her mouth to retort, but the damage was done. The cracks in her facade were visible. Derek placed a protective arm around me. "Let's get going, Emily." "Yes, let's," I agreed. We walked out, leaving Vanessa and Brian to deal with the aftermath of their duplicity. In the car, Derek leaned over and kissed my forehead. "You did great, Emily." "Thanks," I said, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. "I think I finally got my closure." With each mile back home, the past drifted further behind us. What lay ahead was a future built on honesty, love, and mutual respect. A future Vanessa could only dream of. The following weekend, it was time to put our plan into action. Derek and I arrived separately. Derek would come a bit later, just as we had rehearsed. I walked up to Vanessa's door, confidence radiating from my every step. She answered with that same disingenuous smile. "Emily, alone again?" she smirked. "I wouldn't be so sure," I replied coolly, stepping inside. The house was filled with the usual gathering of their friends. Vanessa led me to the living room, where Brian was talking with some guests. He looked up, surprise crossing his face. "Emily, good to see you again," he said, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. "Brian," I nodded. Vanessa's eyes darted between us, calculating. "So," she began, addressing the room, "we have a guest tonight. Emily, why don't you say a few words?" The room quieted, all eyes on me. I felt a surge of determination. "Thank you, Vanessa. It's nice to be here among friends," I started, my voice steady. "It's funny how life changes, how people and relationships evolve." Brian shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa's smile was tighter. "Oh, we all know about evolving relationships, don't we?" she said sweetly. I continued, unapologetic. "I met Derek a few years ago at a business seminar. He's been my rock ever since. And though we started from scratch, we've come a long way." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The doorbell rang, a perfectly timed interruption. Derek walked in, immediately drawing the room's attention. "Apologies, traffic was horrendous," he said, making his way to my side. "Derek, CEO of Greenleaf Inc. Nice to finally meet everyone," he added, shaking hands with a few guests. Vanessa's eyes widened in recognition, but she quickly composed herself. "Looks like you weren't lying, Emily," she chuckled, although her eyes betrayed her. The evening continued, and it wasn't long before Vanessa beckoned me to follow her into the study. I glanced at Derek, who nodded slightly. It was time. "Emily, let's have a private chat," she suggested, a hint of malice in her tone. I followed her, entering the cluttered room filled with awards and framed photos. Vanessa shut the door behind us. "So enjoy playing house with your rich husband?" she sneered. "You seem awfully interested in my life, Vanessa," I replied calmly. "Maybe a bit too interested." She walked to a drawer, pulling out the same recorder. "Remember this?" she asked, pressing play, but there was nothing. Her face paled. "What did you do?" The real question is, what have you done, Vanessa? I said. Just then, Derek walked in. Sorry to intrude, but I couldn't help overhearing, he said, stepping beside me. Vanessa, how many secrets do you have stuffed away in that drawer? Her face contorted with rage. You think you can waltz in and disrupt my life? Derek remained calm. Your life was built on lies. Time for them to come crashing down. He pulled out his phone, playing a recording where Vanessa was heard whispering multiple indiscretions to different men. It was all laid bare. Vanessa's facade crumbled. You're destroying me, she hissed. No, Vanessa, you did that to yourself, I replied, the weight of past betrayals lifting. Brian burst into the room, hearing the tail end of our confrontation. What is going on, he demanded. Derek turned to him. Your wife's been deceiving you far more than you know, Brian. Brian looked at Vanessa, realization and hurt crossing his face. Is it true? He asked, voice breaking. Vanessa whimpered, tears streaming down her face. Brian, I can explain. Don't. I've heard enough, he interrupted, storming out. Derek took my hand, guiding me out of the study. The guests stood in awkward silence as we made our exit. Outside, Derek turned to me, his eyes full of pride. You did it, Emily. You faced her. I smiled, a sense of liberation washing over me. We did it together. As we drove away, I couldn't help but feel a tremendous sense of closure. Vanessa's true nature had been exposed, and I was free, ready to embrace the future with Derek, leaving the past well and truly behind. As we left Vanessa's house, the satisfaction of exposing her deceit filled me with a sense of relief. Derek drove us home in silence, his hand firmly holding mine. The weight of the past few months was slowly lifting. The next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. Emily, it's Brian, the voice on the other end said, sounding defeated. What do you want, Brian? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I needed to talk. Can we meet? He asked, desperation evident in his voice. All right, the Red Maple Cafe in an hour, I replied before hanging up. When I arrived, Brian was already seated, looking disheveled and worn out. I sat down across from him. So what's this about? I asked. Vanessa and I had a massive fight last night after you left. She's been lying to me about so many things, affairs, money, everything, he said, rubbing his temples. She's never been honest, Brian. You chose to ignore the signs, I stated simply. I know, he admitted, tears welling up in his eyes. I don't know what to do, Emily. My life is falling apart. I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. Brian, the truth is, you let this happen. Vanessa manipulated you because you allowed her. Now you have to decide if you want to change things. He nodded, taking in my words. I've been such a fool. Yes, I agreed, but it's not too late to start over. You need to find your own path, away from Vanessa. Brian took a deep breath. You're right. I'm filing for divorce. I need to rediscover who I am without her. Good luck, Brian, I said sincerely, standing up to leave. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of closure with Brian. It was time to focus on myself and my future with Derek. Later that evening, Derek and I were sitting in our living rooms working on some documents for our company. The atmosphere was peaceful, a sharp contrast to the chaos we'd recently faced. Emily, I got an email from our biggest investor. They want to meet us to discuss expanding our project, Derek said, excitement in his voice. That's amazing news, I replied, sharing his enthusiasm. We've come so far together, Derek said, taking my hand. I couldn't have done it without you. And I couldn't have faced my past without you, I replied, squeezing his hand. The following week, Vanessa's dirty laundry was aired publicly. Social media and local news buzzed with details of her multiple affairs and financial misdeeds. Her world was crumbling. Brian called again, this time to thank me. Emily, I've started the divorce process, he said. I owe it to myself to be better. I'm glad to hear that, Brian. Take care of yourself, I replied, genuinely wishing him well. Vanessa, on the other hand, tried to salvage her ruined reputation. She called me, but I ignored it. Derek and I had more important things to focus on, our future. One evening, as Derek and I walked through a park hand in hand, he stopped and looked at me. Emily, this is just the beginning for us. I can't wait to see what we'll achieve together. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Together, we're unstoppable. As we embraced, the weight of the past finally lifted from my shoulders. The journey had been long and painful, but it had forged something unbreakable between Derek and me. Returning home, we celebrated the victory of stepping into a new chapter of our lives. Our company was gaining momentum, and our relationship was stronger than ever. Derek raised a toast. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes full of promise. To love and resilience, I added, clinking my glass against his. With Derek by my side, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead, leaving the shadows of our past far behind. A few weeks later, the fallout from Vanessa's exposure was still echoing through our small town. Derek and I focused on our work, growing stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, I received a call from a number I recognized too well. "Emily, it's Vanessa." Her voice was weak, a stark contrast to her usual bravado. "What do you want, Vanessa?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. "Meet me. Please, I need to talk," she begged. "Why should I?" I countered. "Just please." "I'm at the park near the old library," she said before hanging up. I found her sitting on a bench, looking more gaunt and haunted than ever. She saw me and started to speak. "Emily, everything's falling apart. Brian's left. Our finances are a mess. I need help," she pleaded, tears pooling in her eyes. "Help?" I scoffed. "You destroyed my life and expect me to help you?" "I know I've done terrible things, but I'm desperate," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You poisoned everything you touched, Vanessa. This is your mess to clean up," I answered firmly. "I'm begging you, Emily. I have no one else," she said, sobbing now. I looked at her, feeling a pang of pity, but reminded myself of the pain she caused. "Find a way out yourself, Vanessa. Like you said, I was too naive before. Not anymore." I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. I called Derek, my anchor in this storm. "How did it go?" he asked. "She's hit rock bottom," I said, relief mixed with a touch of sadness in my voice. "You did the right thing," he reassured. Days turned into weeks, and Derek and I continued to push our business forward. One evening, I received a call from our biggest investor. "Emily, I'm pleased to inform you that your proposal has been accepted. We are funding your project," the voice on the other end announced. "That's fantastic news," I exclaimed, excitement bubbling inside me. Derek overheard and rushed over. "What is it?" "We got the funding," I said, throwing my arms around him. "We did it." Derek smiled, a look of pride on his face. I knew we would. Later, we celebrated with close friends and family at our home. Among the guests was Margaret, Derek's mother, who had been a pillar of support. "I'm so proud of you both," she said, embracing us. "Thank you, Margaret." "We wouldn't have done it without your encouragement," I replied, genuinely grateful. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Derek and I found a quiet moment together. "This is just the beginning," Derek said, holding my hand. "Yes, it is," I agreed, my heart full of hope for the future. The next few months were a whirlwind of meetings, traveling, and growing our business. Our hard work paid off, and soon we celebrated a major milestone with our team. "To success," Derek toasted. "And to the incredible journey ahead," I added, clinking my glass with his. In the midst of all this, news of Vanessa continued to circulate. She lost her job, her house, and eventually left town in disgrace. The last I heard, she moved back in with her parents, a far cry from the life she once flaunted. One summer afternoon, Derek and I sat in our backyard, reflecting on everything that had transpired. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "I never imagined we'd get here from where we started." Derek nodded. "But we did, Emily. We turned the worst chapters into our greatest strength." I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "Thank you, Derek, for everything." "We're a team," he replied softly, "and together we can face anything." As we watched the sunset, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been tumultuous, but it had led to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. Derek and I were ready for all the new adventures life had in store for us, with the past firmly behind us. Together, we had redefined our path, turning pain into purpose and building a future grounded in mutual respect and love. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. "I can't believe you, Zara. I slave away at work all day to come home to this slop?" Ethan hurled his plate at the wall, shattering it. I flinched, my voice quivering. I'm sorry. I had a migraine today, and—" "Excuses, excuses. That's all I ever hear from you," Ethan sneered, his face contorted with rage. "You're lucky I even married you, considering how plain and unremarkable you are." His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. "I met Ethan 3 years ago when I started working as a receptionist at his law firm. Despite my quiet nature and average looks, he pursued me relentlessly, showering me with compliments and grand romantic gestures. Swept up in the whirlwind of his charm, I fell head over heels. Our courtship was a fairy tale, but reality set in soon after we exchanged vows. Ethan convinced me to quit my job, insisting that he wanted me to focus on being the perfect housewife. I agreed, eager to please him and build our life together. But 3 months into our marriage, Ethan's true colors began to show. He nitpicked every aspect of my homemaking, from the way I folded his laundry to the seasoning in my cooking. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Honestly, Zara, sometimes I wonder why I bother coming home at all, Ethan sighed dramatically, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. You can't even handle the most basic tasks. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'm trying my best, Ethan. It's just been a difficult day and... Oh, spare me the pity party, he scoffed, rolling his eyes. You don't know what a difficult day is. You sit around this apartment all day, doing God knows what, while I'm out there busting my ass to provide for us. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. It was Ethan's idea for me to quit my job in the first place, yet he never missed an opportunity to throw my unemployment in my face. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my frayed nerves. I appreciate everything you do for us, Ethan. I'll try harder, I promise. You better, he warned, his tone icy. I didn't marry you for your scintillating conversation, Zara. The least you can do is keep the house in order and put a decent meal on the table. With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest as silent sobs racked my body. How had my life come to this? What happened to the charming, attentive man I fell in love with? As I sat there, surrounded by the shards of the shattered plate, I couldn't help but feel like they were a metaphor for my marriage. What once seemed so perfect and promising was now broken beyond repair, and I was left to pick up the pieces, alone and disillusioned. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's verbal abuse only escalated. He seemed to take sadistic pleasure in tearing me down, finding fault in every aspect of my existence. Zara, have you gained weight? He asked one evening, eyeing me critically as I set the table for dinner. You're looking a bit softer these days. I glanced down at my body, suddenly self-conscious. I don't think so. I've been eating the same as always. Ethan smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. Well, maybe that's the problem. You're not exactly active, are you? Sitting around the house all day, it's no wonder you're turning into a blob. His words stung, but I tried to brush them off. I'll start going for walks in the evenings, I offered, hoping to appease him. Don't bother, he scoffed. It's not like it'll make much difference. You'll always be plain old Zara, no matter how much you try to improve yourself. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to defend myself. I knew from experience that arguing with Ethan only made things worse. As I served him his meal, he took one bite and grimaced. Christ, Zara, is this what you call dinner? It's like eating cardboard. I followed the recipe exactly, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I thought you liked chicken parmesan. I like it when it's cooked properly, he retorted, shoving the plate away. This is inedible. Honestly, I don't know why I keep you around. You're useless as a wife and homemaker. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I'm sorry, I whispered, gathering up his plate. I'll make something else. Don't bother, he sneered, standing up from the table. I've lost my appetite. I'm going out. He grabbed his coat and keys, slamming the front door behind him. I knew he was likely heading to a bar or to meet up with one of his colleagues. It wasn't unusual for him to stay out late, leaving me alone with my thoughts and insecurities. As I cleaned up the kitchen, my mind wandered to happier times. I thought about my old job at the law firm, how fulfilling it had been to contribute and feel valued. I missed the camaraderie of my coworkers, the sense of purpose I felt every day. But Ethan had convinced me to give all that up. I make more than enough money for both of us, he'd said. I want you to focus on making our home a haven, a place where I can relax and unwind after a long day at work. At the time, it had sounded romantic, the idea of being a devoted housewife. But now, I realized how much I had sacrificed for a man who didn't appreciate me, who seemed to delight in my misery. Late that night, As I lay in bed alone, I heard Ethan stumble in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He collapsed onto the bed beside me, snoring loudly, not even bothering to undress. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, a hollow feeling in my chest. Was this what my life had become? A series of endless days, catering to a man who treated me like dirt with no escape in sight? I knew I should leave, that I deserved better than this. But a part of me still clung to the hope that Ethan would change, that he'd go back to being the charming, loving man I'd married. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, and my illusions were about to be shattered in the most devastating way possible. It was a typical Sunday afternoon, and I was doing laundry, trying to keep myself busy and distracted from the constant tension that hung over our household. As I emptied Ethan's pockets before tossing his pants into the washing machine, his phone tumbled out, landing on the floor with a clatter. I picked it up, intending to place it on the counter, when a message flashed across the screen. It was from Valerie, Ethan's secretary at the law firm. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I shouldn't pry, but something compelled me to open the message. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Valerie, scantily clad and posed provocatively, accompanied by a text that left little to the imagination. "Can't wait for round 2, baby. Last night was incredible." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I scrolled through the message history, each exchange more explicit than the last. It was clear that Ethan and Valerie were having an affair, and from the looks of it, it had been going on for months. Rage and betrayal coursed through my veins. How could he do this to me? After everything I'd sacrificed for him, all the abuse I'd endured, he had the audacity to cheat on me with his secretary? I heard the front door open and Ethan's footsteps in the hallway. I stormed out of the laundry room, his phone clutched in my hand, ready to confront him. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, thrusting the phone in his face. Ethan's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. "What are you doing snooping through my phone, Zara? That's private." "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "You're screwing your secretary, and you have the nerve to talk about privacy." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like. It's just harmless flirting, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, hot tears streaming down my face. "I saw the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Ethan's face hardened, his eyes turning cold. "Fine, you want the truth? Yes, I've been sleeping with Valerie, but can you blame me? Look at you, Zara. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife. I only married you because I thought you'd be easy to control, but even that's proving to be more trouble than it's worth." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. "You never loved me," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. This whole marriage was a sham. Ethan smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Oh, don't act so surprised. Did you really think someone like me would genuinely fall for someone like you? You were a means to an end, Zara, a convenient little wife to keep the house clean and warm my bed at night, but even you couldn't get that right." I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I had loved, the man I had given up everything for, was nothing more than a manipulative, cheating bastard. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and grief. "I'm leaving, and I'm filing for divorce." Ethan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Go ahead. But remember, Zara, you're nothing without me. You have no job, no skills, no prospects. Good luck finding someone else to put up with your pathetic existence." I didn't bother responding. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing, throwing in clothes and essentials with trembling hands. I couldn't spend another minute in this house, with this man who had shattered my heart and my illusions. As I walked out the door, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, tinged with the bitterness of betrayal. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but anything was better than staying in a marriage built on lies and manipulation. It was time to pick up the pieces of my life and start anew, far away from Ethan and the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. With my marriage in shambles and my heart in pieces, I found myself on my sister's doorstep, suitcase in hand. She took one look at my tear-stained face and pulled me into a tight hug, ushering me inside without a word. Over the next few days, I poured out my story to her, recounting every painful detail of Ethan's betrayal and the emotional abuse I had endured. She listened patiently, offering comfort and support. her anger at Ethan's actions simmering just beneath the surface. "You can stay here as long as you need," she assured me. "We'll get you back on your feet, Zara. You're stronger than you know." With her encouragement, I started looking for work, determined to regain my independence. I landed a job as a waitress at a high-end bistro, the kind of place Ethan and his colleagues would often frequent for business lunches. At first, I was nervous, worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the fast-paced environment and demanding customers. But as the weeks passed, I found myself thriving in the role, my natural warmth and attentiveness shining through. The regular customers began to take notice, complimenting me on my service and friendly demeanor. "You always manage to brighten my day, Zara," one elderly gentleman said, patting my hand as I refilled his coffee. "You have a real gift for making people feel welcome." Their kind words were a balm to my battered self-esteem, slowly helping me rebuild the confidence Ethan had systematically torn down. I started to see myself in a new light, not as the worthless, unlovable woman he had made me believe I was, but as someone with value and purpose. One evening, as I was clearing tables after a particularly busy shift, my manager pulled me aside. "Zara, I just wanted to let you know how impressed I am with your work," he said, smiling warmly. "You've become an integral part of our team, and the customers adore you. Keep up the great work." I thanked him, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly good at something, that I had a place where I belonged. As I walked home that night, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come in such a short time. Just a few months ago, I had been a broken shell of a woman, convinced that I was nothing without Ethan. But now, I was standing on my own 2 feet, building a life for myself that had nothing to do with him. When I arrived at my sister's apartment, I found a large envelope waiting for me on the kitchen table. My heart sank as I recognized Ethan's handwriting, and with trembling fingers I tore it open. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Ethan. A note was attached, his words dripping with disdain. "I've made it easy for you, Zara. Just sign on the dotted line, and you'll be free of me. Not that anyone else would want you, but at least you won't be my problem anymore." I stared at the papers, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Relief that I could finally sever ties with the man who had caused me so much pain. Anger at the callous way he dismissed our marriage, and a tiny lingering sense of sadness for the love I had once believed we shared. But as I picked up the pen and signed my name, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was no longer Ethan's wife, no longer bound to a man who had never truly loved me. I was Zara, a woman with her own strength, her own worth, and a future that was mine to shape. I slid the papers back into the envelope, sealing it with a sense of finality. Tomorrow I would mail them to Ethan's lawyer, and my new life would truly begin. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. A few weeks after I sent the signed divorce papers, I decided to visit the apartment Ethan and I had once shared to collect the last of my belongings. As I stepped inside, a flood of memories washed over me, both good and bad. I pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. I was just finishing up when I heard the front door slam open. I spun around to see Ethan standing there, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled, storming towards me. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm just getting the rest of my things, Ethan. I have every right to be here." "Like hell you do," he shouted, grabbing my arm roughly. "This is my apartment, Zara. You have no claim to it anymore." I yanked my arm free, glaring at him. "Actually, Ethan, this apartment has always been in my name. My grandparents gave it to me as a gift, remember? You never had any legal right to it." His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. But it was quickly replaced by fury. "You can't just sell it without my consent," he bellowed. "I won't let you get away with this, Zara. I'll take you to court and make your life a living hell." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Go ahead, Ethan. Take me to court. I'm sure the judge would love to hear about your infidelity and emotional abuse. I have plenty of evidence to back up my claims." He opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, the front door opened again. We both turned to see Valerie standing there, her eyes wide with shock. "Ethan, "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I smiled coldly. "Hello, Valerie. I see you two are still going strong. I hope you know what you're getting into with this one." Valerie's gaze darted between Ethan and me, confusion and fear written all over her face. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" Ethan's face paled, and he took a step towards her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it looks like. Zara and I are just having a little disagreement about the apartment. It's nothing to worry about." I scoffed. "A little disagreement? Is that what you call it when you ambush your ex-wife and try to intimidate her into giving up her property?" Valerie's eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Ethan, I think you have some explaining to do." I picked up my box of belongings and brushed past them, pausing in the doorway. "You two deserve each other," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "But Valerie, if I were you, I'd watch my back. Ethan has a habit of lying and cheating to get what he wants." With that, I walked out, leaving them to their own devices. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. I had stood up to Ethan, had shown him that I was no longer the meek, submissive woman he had married. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore. As I made my way back to my sister's apartment, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Ethan's manipulation, free from his constant criticism and abuse. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had survived Ethan's betrayal, had picked up the pieces of my shattered life, and put them back together. And now I was ready to start a new chapter, one where I was in control of my own destiny. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone treat me the way Ethan had ever again. I was done being a victim, done being a doormat. From now on, I was going to stand up for myself and fight for the life I deserved. And heaven help anyone who tried to stand in my way. A few days after the confrontation at the apartment, I received a call from an old coworker at the law firm. She had overheard Ethan spinning a tale to Valerie about moving into his family's luxurious vacation home, and she couldn't help but reach out to me. "Zara, I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know," she said, her voice laced with concern. "Ethan is lying to Valerie about his living situation. I've seen the place he's talking about, and it's a far cry from the mansion he's describing." I thanked her for the information, a plan already forming in my mind. I knew Ethan's lies were going to catch up with him sooner or later, and I was determined to be the one to expose him. I dug through my old files until I found a photo of the actual vacation home, a rundown shack that was barely habitable. Armed with this evidence, I made my way to the law firm, determined to confront Ethan and Valerie. As I walked into the office, I saw them standing together by the water cooler, laughing and flirting as if they didn't have a care in the world. I marched up to them, a smile plastered on my face. "Ethan, Valerie, so good to see you both," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. They turned to face me, Ethan's eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What are you doing here, Zara? I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you around." I ignored him, turning to Valerie. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the vacation home, Valerie. It sounds absolutely lovely, but I think there's something you should see." I pulled out the photo of the shack, holding it up for her to see. "This is the real vacation home, Valerie. The one Ethan has been lying to you about." Valerie's eyes widened, and she snatched the photo from my hand, studying it closely. "Ethan, what is this? You told me it was a luxury estate with a pool and a tennis court." Ethan's face paled, and he stammered, trying to come up with an explanation. But before he could speak, I pulled out my phone, playing a series of audio recordings. The recordings were of Ethan's raunchy encounters with various women at the office, evidence gathered by a fed-up coworker who had had enough of his misconduct. The sound of his grunts and moans filled the air, interspersed with the giggling and sighing of his conquests. Valerie's face turned bright red, and she rounded on Ethan, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard! You've been cheating on me this whole time, haven't you? With every woman in this damn office." Ethan held up his hands, trying to placate her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it sounds like. I can explain." But Valerie wasn't having it. She slapped him hard across the face, leaving a bright red handprint on his cheek. "Save it, Ethan. I've heard enough. I'm going straight to HR and reporting your sorry ass for sexual harassment. We'll see how long you keep your job once they hear about this." She stormed off, leaving Ethan standing there, his mouth agape. He turned to me, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. "You bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. "You've ruined everything. I'll make you pay for this, Zara. I swear to God, I'll destroy you." I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You've already destroyed me, Ethan. You took everything from me, my love, my trust, my self-respect. But now it's my turn. I'm going to watch you lose everything, just like I did, and I'm going to enjoy every damn minute of it." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, before Ethan's web of lies unraveled completely, and when it did, I would be there to watch him fall. True to her word, Valerie marched straight into HR and reported Ethan's misconduct. She provided them with copies of the audio recordings I had shared, as well as her own testimony about his lies and infidelity. The fallout was swift and severe. Ethan was immediately suspended pending an investigation, and within a week, he was fired from the law firm. His reputation was in tatters, and word quickly spread throughout the legal community about his unethical behavior. I watched from the sidelines as Ethan's life unraveled, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. He had brought this upon himself, and now he was paying the price for his actions. But even in his downfall, Ethan couldn't let go of his ego. He showed up at my sister's apartment one evening, pounding on the door and demanding to see me. I opened the door warily, keeping the chain latched. "What do you want, Ethan?" He looked haggard and desperate, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. "Zara, please, you have to help me. I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, even Valerie. I have nowhere else to go." I stared at him incredulously. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to come here and ask for my help?" He dropped to his knees, clasping his hands together in a gesture of supplication. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, Zara. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance." I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. "Ethan, I gave you more chances than you ever deserved. I put up with your abuse, your lies, your cheating, all because I loved you. But that love is gone now, and it's never coming back." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Zara, please, I know I can change. I'll be a better man, I swear it. Just don't leave me like this." I sighed, closing my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, my gaze was steady and resolute. "Ethan, I'm not leaving you. I've already left. I moved on with my life the moment I walked out of our apartment with divorce papers in hand." I reached behind the door and picked up a small box, handing it to him through the gap. "Here, I packed up the rest of your things from the apartment. Consider it my final act of kindness." He took the box, his hands shaking. "Zara, I held up a hand, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear it, Ethan. We're done. I'm done. I have a new life now, one that doesn't include you, and I suggest you start building one for yourself, because I won't be there to pick up the pieces anymore." With that, I shut the door, sliding the chain back into place. I leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath. I could hear Ethan on the other side, sobbing and pleading, but I tuned him out. I had meant what I said. I was done with Ethan, done with the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. I had fought too hard and come too far to let him drag me back down into the darkness. I pushed myself off the door and walked into the living room, where my sister was waiting with a cup of tea and a sympathetic ear. I sat down beside her, taking the mug and inhaling the comforting scent of chamomile. "You did the right thing, Zara," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I know, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'm ready to move on, to start a new chapter in my life." She nodded, her eyes shining with love and understanding. "And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." I leaned my head on her shoulder, feeling grateful for her unwavering support. Together we sat in silence, sipping our tea and listening to the sound of Ethan's footsteps fading away into the night. A month had passed since I last saw Ethan, and my life had taken a turn for the better. I had accepted a dream job in Seattle, working as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a new life far away from the painful memories of my past. I was packing up the last of my belongings when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Zara, please, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse. I sighed, crossing my arms over my chest. "What do you want, Ethan? I thought I made it clear that we were done." He pushed past me, stumbling into the apartment. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and I wrinkled my nose in disgust. "I've lost everything, Zara," he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. "My job, my reputation, even my apartment. I've been sleeping on friends' couches and in my car. I'm drowning in debt, and I don't know what to do." I stared at him, feeling a mix of pity and revulsion. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan. But what do you want me to do about it? You brought this on yourself." He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "I need you, Zara. I need you to give me another chance. I know I can change. I know I can be better. Just please, don't leave me like this." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "Ethan, I've given you more chances than I can count, and every time you've let me down. You've hurt me in ways I never thought possible, and I can't go through that again." He reached for me, his hands shaking. "But I love you, Zara. I've always loved you. We can make this work. I know we can." I stepped back out of his reach. "No, Ethan, we can't. Because the truth is, you never loved me. You loved the idea of me, of having someone to control and manipulate. But that's not love, and it never will be." I walked over to the door, opening it wide. "I think it's time for you to go, Ethan. I have a new life waiting for me, and you're not a part of it." He stumbled to his feet, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You can't do this to me, Zara. You can't just walk away like this." I smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "I can, and I am. Goodbye, Ethan." He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and despair. Then, without another word, he walked out the door and out of my life. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. In the distance, I could see the Space Needle, a symbol of the new life that awaited me. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. I had a new job, a new city, and a new love waiting for me. A man I had met at the bistro, a kind and gentle soul who had helped me heal and find happiness again. I picked up my suitcase, taking one last look around the apartment. It had been my home for so long, but now it was time to say goodbye. I walked out the door, feeling a sense of lightness and freedom. The past was behind me, and the future was bright with promise. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I couldn't help but smile. I had survived the worst that life had thrown at me, and I had come out stronger on the other side. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the new chapter in my life with open arms. And as I walked down the street, I knew that nothing could ever hold me back again. "You think you can buy love, Vivian? All you know is how to write checks." Ember's words cut deep as she smirks at me, her hand possessively clutching my husband Ashton's arm. Ashton deserves a woman who appreciates his talent, not some workaholic hag. I stare at my husband in disbelief. Surely he'll defend me, tell Ember she's out of line. But instead he pulls her closer, his eyes cold as they meet mine. "I want a divorce, Vivian. And I'm keeping the restaurant. It's the least you owe me for wasting my youth." His words slice through me like a knife. This can't be happening. I think back to when we first met. Me, a rising corporate lawyer, him, a charming bartender at the swanky lounge I frequented after long days at the firm. He had dreams of becoming a chef, and I believed in him. I paid for his culinary school, poured my savings into launching his restaurant. And this is how he repays me? Ember's victorious grin ignites a fury within me. They want to play dirty? Fine. Game on. They have no idea who they're messing with. I'm Vivian Sinclair, and I never lose. 5 years ago, things were so different. Ashton and I were deeply in love, or so I thought. We'd spend hours talking about his dreams of opening a world-class restaurant. "You make the money, I'll make the magic," he'd say with a wink. And like a fool, I believed him. I worked tirelessly, climbing the corporate ladder to afford the life we dreamed of together. The long hours paid off when I made junior partner. To celebrate, I surprised Ashton with a check, enough to cover his culinary school tuition and then some. He swept me into his arms, peppering my face with kisses. "You're my angel investor," he murmured. I'll make you so proud. And he did, graduating top of his class. Buoyed by his success, I took out a business loan and signed a lease on a prime location downtown. Ashton's Bistro was born, and my husband was the toast of the town. Critics raved, reservations were booked months in advance. I beamed with pride at every accolade. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Late nights at the firm meant missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries. "You're never here, Vivian," Ashton would complain. "I feel like I'm married to your job." So I scaled back at work, started taking cooking classes at the restaurant to spend more time with him. That's where I met Ember, a lively young food blogger with a magnetic personality. She was everything I wasn't: carefree, fun, passionate about food. We bonded over Ashton's culinary genius, and I was grateful to have a new friend. How naive I was. The signs were all there, I just didn't want to see them. The hushed phone calls, the late nights at the restaurant. "Oh, Vivian, you're just being paranoid," Ashton would assure me. Ember is a business contact, nothing more. Nothing more, indeed. The image of them tangled in our bed, clothes strewn across the floor, is seared into my brain. And now they have the audacity to ambush me in my own home, demanding I hand over everything I've worked for. They think they've won, but the game is just beginning. I'll show them what happens when you cross Vivian Sinclair. My dear husband and his mistress picked the wrong woman to mess with. They'll rue the day they betrayed me. I straighten my spine, a cold smile spreading across my lips as I stare them down. "Enjoy your little victory," I say, my voice dripping with venom. "It won't last long. I'll destroy you both, even if it's the last thing I do." The betrayal stings like a fresh wound as I throw myself into work, desperate to ignore the growing distance between Ashton and me. Late nights at the office become my refuge, a place to bury the pain and pretend everything's fine. But deep down, I know it's not. Ember's constant presence at the restaurant doesn't help. She's always there, flitting around Ashton, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm. It makes me sick to see how close they've become. One evening, I decide to surprise Ashton with a romantic dinner at home. I slave over a gourmet meal, light candles, put on a slinky dress, but when he walks in, he barely notices. "What's all this?" he asks, his tone more annoyed than appreciative. "I thought we could have a nice night in," I say, forcing a smile. "Just the two of us," he shrugs. "I'm beat, Viv. It's been a long day at the restaurant. Ember and I were experimenting with some new recipes and lost track of time." There it is again. Ember. Always Ember. I bite back a retort and try to salvage the evening. "Well, I made your favorite, truffle risotto with seared scallops. Come, sit down and relax." But the meal is tense, the conversation stilted. Ashton picks at his food, his mind clearly elsewhere. I want to scream, to demand he pay attention to me, but I don't. I just sip my wine and pretend everything's perfect. Later, as I'm clearing the dishes, I overhear Ashton on the phone in the next room. "I can't do this anymore," he's saying, his voice low. "I feel trapped, unappreciated. She doesn't understand me like you do." My heart clenches. He's talking to her. I know it. Part of me wants to confront him, but I'm afraid of what he'll say, afraid of losing him. Instead, I bury myself in work, taking on more cases, logging longer hours. My best friend Nadia grows concerned. "You need to do something, Viv," but she urges over lunch one day. "Hire a private investigator. Find out the truth. You can't keep living like this." But I brush off her suggestion. "It's just a rough patch," I insist. "Every marriage has them. We'll get through it." Even as I say the words, I know I'm lying to myself. The cracks are widening, the foundation crumbling. And then one night, I find a text from Ember on Ashton's phone. "I can't wait to taste your new creation," it reads, followed by a winking emoji. My blood boils. I confront Ashton, waving the phone in his face. "What the hell is this?" I demand. He snatches the phone from my hand, his face twisting in anger. "It's business, Vivian. God, you're so paranoid. Ember's helping me develop new menu items. That's it." "Don't lie to me," I hiss. "I see how you two are together. The secret glances, the inside jokes. You're sleeping with her, aren't you?" Ashton scoffs. "You're delusional. Maybe if you spent more time being a wife and less time being a lawyer, you wouldn't have these crazy ideas." His words are like a slap. I recoil, tears stinging my eyes. "I've given you everything, Ashton, my love, my support, my money, and this is how you repay me?" He just shakes his head. "I'm done with this conversation. I'm going to the restaurant to clear my head." Don't wait up. As the door slams behind him, I crumple to the floor, sobbing. How did we get here? What happened to the man I married, the love we shared? I know I can't keep living in denial. Nadia's right, I need answers. With shaking hands, I dial the number of a well-known private investigator. It's time to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. If Ashton thinks he can betray me and walk away unscathed, he's got another thing coming. I'll find out exactly what he's been up to with Ember. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. The private investigator's report confirms my worst fears. Grainy photos of Ashton and Ember, caught in intimate embraces, secret rendezvous at her apartment. The evidence is undeniable. My husband is having an affair. I confront him that evening, slamming the photos down on the kitchen counter. Care to explain these? I ask, my voice trembling with rage. Ashton barely glances at the pictures. Where did you get those? Have you been spying on me? Don't try to turn this around on me, I snap. You're the one screwing your little food blogger behind my back. He has the audacity to roll his eyes. It's not what you think, Vivian. Ember and I, we have a connection. She understands my passion for food, my dreams. She supports me in ways you never have. Supports you? I laugh bitterly. I'm the one who paid for your culinary school, bankrolled your precious restaurant. I've supported you every step of the way. With money, sure, but emotionally? You're never there, Viv. Always working, always too busy for me. Ember makes me feel alive, appreciated. His words cut deep, but I refuse to let him see how much he's hurting me. If you're so unhappy, why stay with me? Why not just ask for a divorce? Ashton smirks. And give up the cushy life you provide? The fancy apartment, the expensive toys? I'm not stupid, Vivian. I know a good thing when I have it. Rage boils inside me. So you thought you could have your cake and eat it too? Keep me around to foot the bills while you screw your mistress on the side? It's not like that, he insists, but I can see the lie in his eyes. Get out, I hiss. Get out of my house, my life. I never want to see you again. Ashton shrugs. Fine, but don't think you're getting rid of me that easily. I have just as much right to the restaurant, to everything we've built together, and I'll fight you for it. He storms out, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, hot tears streaming down my face. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? I trusted him, loved him, and all along he was betraying me. Nadia comes over that night, a bottle of wine in hand. I'm so sorry, Viv, she says, hugging me tight. I knew something was off with Ashton, but I never imagined. He's been cheating on me with Ember, I choke out. He wants a divorce, says he's entitled to half of everything, the restaurant, our assets, all of it. Nadia's eyes flash with anger. Like hell he is. We'll make him pay for what he's done to you, Viv. He doesn't deserve a cent. I nod, wiping away my tears. You're right. It's time to stop crying and start fighting. Ashton wants to play dirty? Well, two can play at that game. The next morning, I march into my lawyer's office, the investigator's report clutched in my hand. I want to file for divorce, I tell him, and I want you to find any dirt you can on my husband, dig into his finances, his business dealings. I have a feeling he's hiding something. My lawyer nods. Consider it done. We'll make sure you come out on top, Vivian. He won't know what hit him. As I leave the office, a sense of cold determination settles over me. Ashton thinks he can destroy me, but he's underestimated the woman he married. I built him up from nothing, and now I'll tear him down just as easily. He and Ember want a war? They've got one. And I never lose a fight. They'll both pay for their betrayal, one way or another. I'll make sure of it. The divorce proceedings are ugly, a bitter battle of he said, she said. Ashton paints me as a cold, unloving workaholic, while I expose his infidelity and financial improprieties. My lawyer uncovers evidence of Ashton's embezzlement from the restaurant, funneling money into a secret account to fund his lavish gifts for Ember. Armed with this information, we negotiate a favorable settlement. Ashton walks away with nothing. No stake in the restaurant, no alimony, just the clothes on his back and his precious mistress by his side. But my victory is short-lived. Ashton and Ember launch a smear campaign against me, trashing my reputation to anyone who will listen. They post vicious lies on social media, accusing me of being a ruthless gold digger who never loved Ashton, only his potential for success. Their words sting, but I hold my head high. I know the truth, and so do those closest to me. Nadia stands firmly by my side, a fierce ally in the face of their cruelty. At the restaurant, I waste no time cleaning house. I fire Ashton and Ember on the spot, relishing the shock and outrage on their faces as I have security escort them from the premises. "You can't do this," Ashton sputters. "This is my restaurant, my dream." "Not anymore," I say coldly. "You lost the right to call it yours the moment you betrayed me. Now get out of my sight before I have you both arrested for trespassing." Ember hurls obscenities at me as they're dragged away, but I don't flinch. Let them spew their venom. They're powerless now, nothing more than a footnote in my life. With Ashton and Ember gone, I pour my energy into revamping the restaurant. I hire a talented new head chef, update the menu, and rebrand the entire concept. Ashton's Bistro becomes Vivian's, a chic and modern eatery that quickly gains buzz among the city's foodies. The grand reopening is a smash success, with lines out the door and glowing reviews from critics. As I mingle with the guests, accepting their congratulations and well wishes, I feel a sense of pride and vindication. I built this place, made it thrive, and I did it all without Ashton. But my triumph is tempered by whispers of Ashton and Ember's latest antics. They've been blacklisted from every reputable restaurant in town, reduced to working in seedy dives and fast food joints. Part of me feels a twinge of pity, but I quickly push it aside. They brought this on themselves with their lies and betrayal. Months pass, and Vivian's goes from strength to strength. We expand to a second location, then a third. I become a fixture on the city's culinary scene, sought after for interviews and partnerships. And then one day I spot a familiar face in the crowd at a food festival. Ashton, looking haggard and defeated, Ember clinging to his arm like a lifeline. They catch my eye, and I see the flash of anger and resentment in their gazes. "Well, well," Ember sneers, "if it isn't the great Vivian Sinclair, lording her success over the little people." "You ruined our lives," Ashton spits. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I regard them coolly. "You ruined your own lives," I say. "I just stopped letting you ruin mine." They lunge at me then, hurling insults and accusations, but security quickly intervenes. As they're dragged away screaming and cursing my name, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. I'm free of them, I realize. Free of their toxicity, their lies, their manipulation. I've built a new life for myself, one filled with success and purpose, and they have no power over me anymore. Let them wallow in their misery, their bitterness. I'm done being dragged down by their darkness. I have a bright future ahead of me, and I intend to make the most of every moment. I walk away from the festival with my head held high, ready to embrace whatever challenges and triumphs lie ahead. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am unbreakable. The success of Vivian's is a balm to my battered soul. As the restaurant thrives, expanding to new locations across the city, I throw myself into my work with renewed passion. It's a welcome distraction from the pain of Ashton's betrayal, a way to channel my anger into something productive. But even as I bask in the glow of my achievements, I can't shake the desire for revenge. I want Ashton and Ember to suffer, to feel the same humiliation and despair they inflicted on me. My opportunity arrives in the form of a high-profile food festival where Vivian's has been invited to showcase our signature dishes. As I'm prepping my team for the event, I overhear a startling conversation between two of my sous chefs. "Did you hear about Ashton Sinclair?" one of them whispers. "Apparently, he and that blogger chick have been blacklisted from every decent restaurant in the city. No one will hire them after the stunt they pulled with Vivian." "Serves them right," the other chef scoffs. "I heard they're barely scraping by, working dead-end jobs and living in some dump of an apartment." A thrill of vindication runs through me. So the mighty have fallen. Ashton and Ember, once the darlings of the culinary scene, now reduced scraping the bottom of the barrel. But it's not enough. I want to see their downfall for myself, to revel in their misery. And what better place to do it than at the food festival, where the cream of the crop will be gathered to celebrate the city's finest cuisine. I make some discreet inquiries and discover that Ashton and Ember have indeed hit rock bottom. They're working as lowly prep cooks at a seedy diner, barely making ends meet. The image of them toiling away in a greasy kitchen, their dreams of culinary stardom shattered, fills me with a perverse sense of satisfaction. On the day of the festival, I arrive early to oversee the setup of the Vivian's booth. As I'm arranging our artfully plated creations, I catch a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Ashton, looking haggard and defeated, Ember clinging to his arm like a desperate barnacle. Our eyes meet, and I see the flash of recognition, followed by pure, unadulterated loathing. They make a beeline for me, pushing through the throng of festival-goers with single-minded determination. "Well, well, well," Ember sneers as they approach. "If it isn't the great Vivian Sinclair lording her success over the little people. Come to gloat, have you?" I regard them coolly, taking in their shabby appearance and the bitter lines etched into their faces. "I'm here to showcase my restaurant," I say evenly. "What brings you two to the festival? Surely you're not here to sample the gourmet offerings." Ashton's face twists into an ugly scowl. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? Ruining our lives, blacklisting us from the industry. Are you happy now, Vivian? Is this what you wanted?" I feel a flare of anger at his accusation. "You ruined your own lives," I snap. "I didn't force you to cheat, to lie, to betray me. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." Ember lets out a shrill laugh. "Consequences? Is that what you call it? You destroyed us, Vivian. You took everything we had and ground it into dust. And you took everything I had and stomped on it without a second thought," I retort. "My love, my trust, my marriage, you betrayed me in the worst possible way, and for what? A cheap fling and some ego boost?" Ashton's face reddens with rage. "You never appreciated me," he snarls, "never supported my dreams. Ember understands me in ways you never could." I shake my head in disbelief. "I gave you everything, Ashton. My heart, my money, my unwavering support, and you threw it all away for a piece of ass. Well, I hope she was worth it, because now you have nothing, no restaurant, no reputation, no future, and you have no one to blame but yourselves." With that, I turn on my heel and walk away, leaving them sputtering with impotent fury. Let them stew in their own misery, I think. They've reaped what they sowed, and I wash my hands of them both. As I return to the Vivian's booth, head held high, I feel a sense of closure wash over me. I've confronted my demons and emerged victorious. Ashton and Ember are nothing more than a bitter memory now, a cautionary tale of what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. I am Vivian Sinclair, restaurateur extraordinaire, and I bow to no one, least of all a pair of backstabbing traitors who thought they could bring me down. I've risen from the ashes of their betrayal, and I will continue to soar. Nothing and no one can stop me now. The food festival marks a turning point in my life. With Ashton and Ember's public humiliation, I feel a sense of closure, a readiness to move on from the pain of their betrayal. I throw myself into my work with renewed vigor, determined to make Vivian's the most acclaimed restaurant in the city. And it pays off. Within months, we're booked solid every night, with a waitlist stretching weeks in advance. Critics rave about our innovative menu and impeccable service, and I become a regular fixture on the culinary scene, sought after for interviews and collaborations. But even as I bask in my success, I can't help but keep tabs on Ashton and Ember. Call it morbid curiosity, but I need to know just how far they've fallen. Through the grapevine, I learned that they've been blacklisted from every reputable restaurant in town. No one wants to be associated with the scandalous couple who betrayed the beloved Vivian Sinclair. They're forced to take whatever scraps they can get, working menial jobs in fast food joints and seedy diners. A part of me feels a twinge of pity for them. After all, I once loved Ashton deeply, and I can't forget the good times we shared. But then I remember the pain they caused me, the callous way they discarded our marriage, and any sympathy I might have felt evaporates like mist in the sun. Let them suffer, I think. Let them feel a fraction of the heartbreak and humiliation they inflicted on me. It's no less than they deserve. As the months pass, I hear whispers of their increasingly desperate situation. They've been evicted from their apartment, unable to make rent on their meager wages. They're living out of Ember's beat-up old car, sneaking into shelters for meals and showers. It's a far cry from the lavish lifestyle they once enjoyed, funded by my hard work and sacrifices. The irony is not lost on me. One evening, as I'm leaving the restaurant after a particularly grueling shift, I spot a familiar figure huddled in the alley behind the building. It's Ashton, looking gaunt and filthy, his once pristine chef's white stained and tattered. He looks up at me with bloodshot eyes, a mixture of shame and resentment on his haggard face. "Come to gloat?" he rasps, his voice rough from disuse. I shake my head. I take no pleasure in your suffering, Ashton. Despite what you may think, I never wanted this for you. He lets out a bitter laugh. Could have fooled me. You took everything from us, Vivian. Our jobs, our reputations, our future. You ruined our lives. I feel a flare of anger at his accusation. You ruined your own lives, I snap. I didn't force you to cheat, to lie, to betray me. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. Ashton's face twists into a sneer. Consequences? Is that what you call it? We're living on the streets, Vivian, begging for scraps like dogs. Is this the revenge you wanted? To see us reduced to nothing? I take a deep breath, trying to calm the rage simmering in my veins. I never wanted revenge, Ashton. I wanted justice. I wanted you to feel a fraction of the pain you caused me, to understand the magnitude of your betrayal. But I never wished for this. I never wanted to see you destroyed. He scoffs. Could have fooled me. I sigh, suddenly feeling very tired. Think what you want, Ashton. But know this, I've moved on. I've built a new life for myself, one that doesn't include you or Ember. And I'm happy, truly happy, for the first time in years. I turn to walk away, but his voice stops me. Vivian, wait. I glance back over my shoulder, seeing a flicker of the man I once loved in his haunted eyes. I'm sorry, he whispers, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I nod, a lump forming in my throat. I appreciate that, Ashton. But you're right, it doesn't change anything. We can't go back to what we were. That life is over. With that, I walk away, leaving him slumped in the alley. As I climb into my car and drive off into the night, I feel a sense of closure wash over me. The anger and pain that have fueled me for so long begin to dissipate, replaced by a newfound sense of peace. I have survived the worst betrayal imaginable, and I have emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am finally free. With Ashton's apology still ringing in my ears, I throw myself into expanding Vivian's empire. We open new locations across the city, each one more successful than the last. My name becomes synonymous with culinary excellence, and I'm hailed as a visionary in the industry. But my success is about more than just personal achievement. I want to use my platform to make a difference, to empower other women who have faced adversity and betrayal. I start a mentorship program for aspiring female chefs, offering guidance and support as they navigate the cutthroat world of professional kitchens. I also partner with local women's shelters, donating a portion of Vivian's profits to help survivors of domestic abuse rebuild their lives. It's deeply fulfilling work, and it gives me a sense of purpose beyond the daily grind of running a restaurant. I feel like I'm making a real difference in people's lives, using my own pain and struggle as a catalyst for positive change. But even as I bask in the glow of my newfound purpose, I can't help but think of Ashton and Ember. Despite everything they've done, a part of me still feels a twinge of pity for them. I know firsthand how easy it is to get caught up in the allure of success, to let ego and ambition cloud your judgment. And while I can never forgive their betrayal, I can't help but wonder if they truly understood the consequences of their actions. Through the grapevine, I hear that they've hit rock bottom, blacklisted from the industry, drowning in debt, and struggling with addiction. They're a cautionary tale of what happens when you let greed and selfishness consume you. A part of me wants to reach out, to offer some kind of olive branch, but I know it's not my responsibility to save them from themselves. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the fallout. Instead, I focus on my own healing, on building a life that is authentic and fulfilling. I surround myself with people who lift me up, who support my dreams and celebrate my successes. Nadia becomes my rock, my confidant, and my sounding board. She's there for me through every triumph and setback, always ready with a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on. Together, we host lavish charity events at Vivian's, raising money and awareness for causes close to our hearts. I speak openly about my own experiences, hoping to inspire others to find strength in the face of adversity. And slowly but surely, I feel the wounds of Ashton's betrayal begin to heal. The pain and anger that once consumed me fade into the background, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. I know I'll never forget what he did, but I refuse to let it define me. I am more than the sum of my scars, more than the product of someone else's cruelty. I am Vivian Sinclair, a survivor, a fighter, and a force to be reckoned with. And I will spend the rest of my life using my voice and my platform to lift up others, to create a world where no one has to suffer in silence. As I stand on the balcony of my penthouse apartment, looking out over the twinkling lights of the city, I feel a sense of gratitude wash over me. I have lost much, but I have gained so much more. I have found my purpose, my passion, and my power. And I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength and resilience to overcome them. Let Ashton and Ember wallow in their misery, their regret. I have moved on, focused on building a life that is rich in love, purpose, and meaning. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am unstoppable. Zara, what the hell is this? I demanded, holding up the shredded remains of my late mother's quilt. Zara smirked, her green eyes glinting with malice. Oops, my scissors slipped. Guess you'll have to toss out that ratty old thing now, Camille. It's not like it belonged in this house anyway, just like you. I stood there, my hands shaking with rage as I clutched the tattered fabric. This quilt was the last piece of my mother I had left, a cherished memento of the love and warmth she always provided. And now, thanks to my spiteful teenage sister-in-law, it was ruined. But I shouldn't have been surprised. This was just another day in the Hawthorne household, where I was constantly reminded that I would never truly belong. As I looked around the lavish penthouse with its sleek modern furnishings and breathtaking city views, I felt like an outsider, an intruder in my own home. I had given up everything, my career as a fashion designer, my independence, my identity, to be with Jackson, to be the perfect society wife. But no matter how hard I tried, his family made it clear I would never be good enough. What's going on in here? Olivia, my mother-in-law, strutted into the room, her critical gaze sweeping over me. Camille, I thought I told you to have the laundry finished by noon. Honestly, it's not that hard. What do you even do all day? I bit my tongue, swallowing the retort that bubbled up, that I spent my days cooking, cleaning, and catering to her every whim, that I poured my heart into being the homemaker she demanded, even as she belittled my every effort. I was just about to get to it, Olivia, I said evenly, but then I found this. I held up the destroyed quilt, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Zara, Oh, that old thing? Olivia cut me off with a dismissive wave. It was an eyesore anyway. Zara did you a favor getting rid of it. She turned to her daughter with an approving smile. Good job, sweetheart. This house has no room for Camille's second-hand rags. Zara preened under the praise, shooting me a triumphant smirk. I opened my mouth to protest, but just then Jackson walked in. What's with all the commotion? He asked, loosening his tie. His eyes fell on the quilt in my hands, and he frowned. Is that your mother's blanket? What happened to it? Your sister destroyed it, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. On purpose, and your mother is congratulating her. Jackson sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Cam, I'm sure it was an accident. Don't make a big deal out of it. An accident? Was he serious? I stared at him, searching his face for any hint of the man I fell in love with, the man who promised to always stand by my side. But lately, that man was getting harder and harder to find. You're taking their side? I asked incredulously. Again, Jackson, this quilt was priceless to me. It was all I had left of my mother, and now it's gone. It's just a blanket, Camille, he said impatiently. I'll buy you a new one, a nicer one. Just let it go, okay? Let it go. That's what he always said. Every time his family disrespected me, every time they made me feel small and worthless, he told me to let it go, to be the bigger person. But as I stood there, surrounded by the people who were supposed to be my family, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep shrinking myself to fit into their narrow expectations. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness, my very sense of self, for a man who wouldn't even stand up for me. Something inside me snapped, a hidden reserve of strength and resolve I didn't know I had. I dropped the ruined quilt and squared my shoulders, meeting Olivia's icy glare head-on. No, I said firmly, I won't let it go. Not this time. I'm done being your punching bag. I'm done playing by your rules. From now on, I'm standing up for myself, with or without your support. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out, my head held high. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I was done being a doormat in my own life. It was time to take back control, no matter the cost. The confrontation with Zara and Olivia left me shaking with anger and humiliation. I couldn't believe the cruelty they were capable of, destroying the one thing I cherished most. And Jackson, my supposed partner, had once again failed to stand up for me. I stormed into our bedroom, hot tears stinging my eyes. I yanked open the closet door, grabbing a suitcase and tossing clothes haphazardly inside. I couldn't stay here another minute, not with these vipers who delighted in tearing me down. "What do you think you're doing?" Jackson's voice cut through the room, sharp and accusatory. I whirled around, my heart pounding. "I'm leaving, Jackson. I can't do this anymore. I won't." He scoffed, crossing his arms. "Don't be dramatic, Camille. It was just a stupid quilt." "It was my mother's quilt," I shouted, my voice cracking. "The only piece of her I had left, and your sister destroyed it on purpose, while your mother cheered her on." "They didn't mean anything by it," he said dismissively. "You're overreacting as usual." I stared at him, incredulous. "Overreacting? Are you kidding me? Your family has done nothing but belittle and demean me from the moment I stepped into this house, and you've let them." "What do you want me to do, Camille?" he snapped. "They're my family. I can't just turn my back on them." "But you can turn your back on me," I retorted. "Your wife? The mother of your child?" He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You knew what you were getting into when you married me. You knew my family could be difficult." "Difficult?" I laughed bitterly. "They're monsters, Jackson, and you're just as bad for enabling them." His face hardened, his eyes turning to ice. "Watch yourself, Camille. Remember, I'm the one who gave you this life. This luxurious penthouse, the clothes on your back, the food on your plate. Without me, you're nothing." His words hit me like a slap. Is that really how he saw me? As some charity case he had deigned to rescue from a life of mediocrity? "Well then, I guess it's a good thing I'm leaving," I said coldly. "I'd rather have nothing than spend another second with you and your toxic family." I zipped up the suitcase, brushing past him, but he grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back," he hissed. "I'll make sure you never see Mia again. I'll bury you in so much legal red tape you'll be destitute and alone. Is that what you want?" Fear seized my heart at the thought of losing my daughter, of being cut off from the one pure, untainted love in my life. But then something caught my eye. Peeking out from under the bed was a scrap of red lace. With a sinking feeling, I reached down and pulled out a skimpy thong, one that definitely didn't belong to me. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, holding up the offending undergarment. For a split second, panic flashed across Jackson's face, but he quickly composed himself, snatching the thong from my hand. "It's nothing," he said smoothly. "Probably just something of Zara's that got mixed up in the laundry." "Bullshit," I spat. "Zara wouldn't be caught dead in La Perla, but you know who would?" I stepped closer, my voice dripping with venom. "Your secretary, Lily." He blanched, confirming my suspicions. The late nights at the office, the whispered phone calls, the designer gifts he claimed were for clients. It all made sense now. "How long?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "How long have you been screwing her behind my back?" "Camille, I can explain," he started, but I cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Save it," I said, grabbing my suitcase. "I'm done. With you, with this sham of a marriage, with this entire fucked-up family. You can have your little mistress. But I'm taking Mia, and I'm taking you for everything you're worth." I strode out of the room, my head held high, even as tears streamed down my face. I had lost my mother's quilt, my dignity, my faith in the man I loved. But I refused to lose myself. This was war, and I was ready to fight like hell. With shaking hands, I rifled through the drawers of Jackson's mahogany desk, my heart pounding in my ears. I needed proof of his infidelity, something tangible to use against him in the divorce proceedings. Beneath a stack of financial reports, I found it. A small, black velvet box. My stomach lurched as I flipped it open, revealing a stunning diamond bracelet. The kind of bracelet you give to a mistress, not a wife. I snapped a photo with my phone, then kept digging. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, email printouts, all painting a sordid picture of Jackson's extramarital activities. He had been lavishing Lily with gifts and clandestine getaways, all while treating me like a burden. Rage bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. How dare he? How dare he betray me, humiliate me, Make me feel like I was the problem when he was the one stepping out on our marriage? I thought back to all the times he had critiqued my appearance, making snide comments about my post-baby body. The way he would roll his eyes when I talked about my fashion blog, dismissing it as a silly hobby. He had chipped away at my self-esteem, piece by piece, until I barely recognized myself. But now I saw him for what he truly was. A manipulative, selfish bastard who cared only about his own pleasure and status. Well, I was done being his trophy wife, his arm candy, his doormat. I gathered up the evidence, stuffing it into my purse. Then I marched into the living room where Jackson was pouring himself a scotch, acting like he didn't have a care in the world. "You son of a bitch," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" He looked up, his expression a mix of annoyance and boredom. "Do what, Camille? What are you babbling about now?" I threw the credit card statements at his feet, watching as they fluttered to the ground. "I know about Lily. I know you've been cheating on me." For a moment he looked stunned, then his face twisted into an ugly sneer. "So what if I have? Can you blame me? Look at you, Camille. You let yourself go. You're not the woman I married." His words sliced through me like a knife, but I refused to let him see me crumble. Not anymore. "No, I'm not," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I'm better, because I'm done letting you treat me like garbage. I'm done being your wife, your punching bag, your fucking servant." I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo of the diamond bracelet. I wonder what the tabloids would make of this. The great Jackson Hawthorne caught showering his secretary with jewels while his wife raises his child. His face paled, his eyes darting to the phone. "Camille, let's not be hasty. We can work this out. I can change, I swear." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "It's too late for that. I've already filed for divorce, and I'm going for full custody of Mia." "You can't do that," he sputtered, his fists clenching. "I won't let you take my daughter from me." "You should have thought of that before you stuck your dick in your secretary," I spat. "I'm done being your doormat, Jackson. I'm taking Mia, and I'm taking half of everything. You can rot in hell with your precious family for all I care." I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me cold. "You'll never make it on your own," he sneered. "You're nothing without me, Camille. Just a washed-up wannabe designer with a stupid little blog. You need me." I whirled back around, getting right in his face. "Watch me," I hissed. "I'm going to build a life for myself and Mia, a better life than you ever gave us. And when I'm a success, when my designs are walking down runways and gracing magazine covers, I'll make sure the whole world knows the truth about you, about the kind of man you really are." With that, I stormed out of the penthouse, Mia clutched tightly in my arms. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was never looking back. Jackson Hawthorne and his vicious family could burn in the hell they'd made for themselves. I was free, and I was ready to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever. Months had passed since I walked out on Jackson and his toxic family. Mia and I had settled into a small but cozy studio apartment, far from the glittering penthouse that had been our gilded cage. Money was tight, but we were making it work. I poured my heart into my fashion blog, determined to turn it into something more, a career, a future, a way out of the mess my life had become. I was just putting Mia down for a nap when a frantic knocking sounded at the door. Frowning, I tiptoed over and peeked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Zara. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. The last thing I needed was more drama from the Hawthorns. But something in Zara's expression, a desperate, haunted look I had never seen before, made me unlock the door. "Zara?" I said cautiously. "What are you doing here?" She pushed past me, her eyes wild. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything's fallen apart, Camille. It's all gone to shit." I closed the door, my heart pounding. "What are you talking about? What's happened?" The story spilled out of her in fits and starts, each revelation more shocking than the last. After the divorce, Walter's shady business dealings had come to light. Embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. He had been running a criminal empire right under everyone's noses. The FBI had seized all their assets, leaving the family penniless and disgraced. Jackson, unable to cope with the shame and pressure, had turned to alcohol and gambling. He had blown through what little money they had left, racking up massive debts to some very dangerous people. Olivia, always so poised and put together, had suffered a nervous breakdown and was currently in a psychiatric ward. And Zara? She had been unceremoniously kicked out of her elite private school, her tuition left unpaid. She was broke, homeless, and utterly alone. I didn't know where else to turn, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know I've been awful to you, Camille. I know I don't deserve your help, but I have nowhere else to go. I stared at her, conflicting emotions warring inside me. A part of me, the part that still stung from her cruelty, wanted to turn her away, to let her suffer the consequences of her actions. But another part, the part that knew how it felt to be lost and scared, couldn't bear to leave her on the streets. You can stay here, I said finally, my voice tight, for a little while, until you figure something out. Her shoulders sagged with relief, fresh tears spilling over. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you so much, Camille. I swear, I'll make it up to you. I'll be better, I promise. I held up a hand, cutting off her tearful rambling. Let's get one thing straight, Zara. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Mia. She deserves to have her aunt in her life, even if that aunt is a spoiled brat who made my life hell. Zara flinched at my harsh words, but nodded. I understand, and I'm sorry, Camille, for everything. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know, but sorry doesn't erase the past. If you're going to stay here, there will be rules, boundaries. You will treat me with respect, pull your weight around the apartment, and be a positive influence on Mia. If you can't do that, then there's the door. She nodded vigorously, her eyes wide. I will, I promise. I'll do whatever you say. Good, I said, my tone softening slightly. Then let's get you settled in. It's not much, but it's home. As I showed Zara to the pull-out couch that would be her bed, I couldn't help but marvel at the twists and turns life had taken. A year ago, I had been the one groveling at the Hawthorns' feet, desperate for scraps of their approval. Now they were the ones crawling to me for help. Their world shattered beyond repair. It was a bittersweet victory, one that tasted of ashes and regret. But as I watched Zara curl up on the couch, her face etched with gratitude and exhaustion, I knew I had made the right choice. Not for her, but for me. For the person I wanted to be, the person my mother had raised me to be. Someone who could find compassion, even in the face of cruelty. Someone who could rise above the pain and pettiness and choose to be better. Someone who could finally truly be free. Living with Zara was a test of my patience and resolve. Despite her tearful promises to change, old habits die hard. She was moody, entitled, and prone to lashing out when things didn't go her way. More than once I had to bite my tongue to keep from throwing her out on the street. But I persevered, for Mia's sake. My daughter had lost so much already. Her father, her grandparents, the only home she'd ever known. I couldn't bear to take her aunt away, too, no matter how difficult Zara made things. So I set clear boundaries, laying out the rules of the apartment in no uncertain terms. Zara was to clean up after herself, contribute to the household chores, and watch her language around Mia. If she couldn't follow those simple guidelines, she was welcome to leave. To my surprise, Zara actually made an effort. She tidied the living room without being asked, helped with the dishes, and even entertained Mia while I worked on my blog. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was progress. And my blog, it was finally taking off. My honest, raw posts about my divorce and starting over had struck a chord with readers. My follower count was skyrocketing, and I was getting more sponsored content offers than ever before. But the real game changer came in the form of an email from a major fashion magazine. They had stumbled across my blog and were impressed with my designs. They wanted to feature me in a multi-page spread, showcasing my work to the world. I stared at the email, my heart pounding. This was it. The big break I had been dreaming of. The chance to turn my passion into a real career. With shaking hands, I typed out a reply, accepting their offer. I knew I should be ecstatic, but a part of me was terrified. Putting myself out there, exposing my creations to the judgment of the fashion industry, it was a huge risk. If they hated my work, it could crush my dreams before they even had a chance to take flight. But I couldn't let fear hold me back. Not anymore. I had spent too long playing it safe, shrinking myself to fit into the mold of the perfect wife and mother. It was time to bet on myself, to chase my dreams with everything I had. I threw myself into preparing for the feature, stitching and sketching late into the night. Zara, to her credit, stepped up to help with Mia, keeping her occupied so I could work. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. As the date of the photo shoot approached, I could barely contain my excitement. This was really happening. I was going to be in a magazine, my designs splashed across glossy pages for all the world to see. I was so caught up in my own head, I almost didn't hear the knock at the door. Assuming it was the mailman, I swung it open without checking the peephole. My stomach dropped. There, standing in the dingy hallway of my apartment building, were the last people I ever expected to see. Jackson, Walter, and Olivia. My ex-husband and former in-laws, the people who had made my life a living hell. They looked haggard and worn, their designer clothes rumpled and stained. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Jackson stepped forward, his bloodshot eyes pleading. "Camille, we need your help. We have nowhere else to go." I wanted to slam the door in their faces, to tell them to go to hell and never come back. But before I could, Walter shouldered his way into the apartment, Olivia and Jackson close behind. "We're moving in," Walter announced, dropping his suitcase on the floor. "You have a spare room, don't you? It'll be just like old times." I stared at them, my mouth hanging open in shock. The audacity, the sheer nerve of these people. To show up at my door, expecting me to take them in after everything they had done. But as I looked at their desperate, defeated faces, I realized something. They had nothing left. No money, no status, no power. They were at rock bottom, just like I had been. And in that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could turn them away, leave them to fend for themselves on the streets, or I could be the bigger person, the person my mother had raised me to be. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Fine," I said, my voice hard. "You can stay, but we're doing this on my terms. And if you cross me, even once, you're gone." "Understood?" They nodded, relief etched on their faces. As they shuffled into the apartment, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. The Hawthorns had taken everything from me. My home, my marriage, my self-worth. But now the tables had turned. Now they were the ones at my mercy, and I was going to make damn sure they never forgot it. The Hawthorns settled into my apartment like a plague, infesting every corner with their toxic presence. They critiqued everything from the size of the rooms to the threadbare furnishings, making snide comments about how far I had fallen. I gritted my teeth and bore it, reminding myself that this was temporary. As soon as my feature launched, I would have the means to kick them out and never look back. But living with them was a nightmare. Walter and Olivia commandeered the bedroom, leaving Jackson to sleep on the couch. They treated my home like a hotel, expecting me to wait on them hand and foot. Olivia was the worst, constantly finding fault with my parenting and housekeeping. "Really, Camille," she sniffed, eyeing the dishes in the sink. "I thought you would have learned to keep a cleaner house by now. It's no wonder Jackson strayed." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. It took every ounce of willpower not to throw her designer luggage out the window. Jackson, for his part, mostly avoided me. He spent his days sulking around the apartment, drinking my cheap vodka and muttering about his fall from grace. I caught him eyeing Zara a few times, his gaze lingering on her developing curves. It made my skin crawl. But Zara surprised me. She stepped up in ways I never could have imagined, helping with Mia and standing up to Olivia's barbs. "Back off, Mom," she snapped one evening when Olivia started in on my cooking. "Camille's doing the best she can, which is more than I can say for you." Olivia's face turned an ugly shade of purple, but she shut her mouth. I shot Zara a grateful look, mouthing a silent, "Thank you." As the day of my big photo shoot approached, the tension in the apartment reached a boiling point. I was a bundle of nerves, triple-checking my designs and obsessing over every detail. "I don't know why you're bothering with this silly little hobby," Walter sneered, flipping through my sketches. "It's not like you have any real talent. You should be focusing on finding a rich husband to take care of you and Mia." I snatched the sketches back, my hands shaking with rage. "This is not a hobby," I said, my voice low and fierce. "This is my career, my passion, and I will not let you or anyone else diminish that." Walter scoffed, exchanging a knowing look with Olivia. "Career? Please. You're a washed-up housewife with delusions of grandeur. You'll never make it in the fashion world." I opened my mouth to retort, but Mia's cry from the bedroom cut me off. I shot Walter a venomous glare and hurried to comfort my daughter. As I rocked Mia back to sleep, I felt a surge of determination. I would show them. I would show everyone. I was more than just Jackson Hawthorne's ex-wife, more than a mother, more than a failed socialite. I was Camille Rousseau, a designer, a dreamer, a survivor. And I was going to take the fashion world by storm, no matter what it took. The morning of the shoot dawned bright and clear. I kissed Mia goodbye, leaving her in Zara's capable hands. Then I gathered up my designs and headed out the door, my heart pounding with excitement and nerves. But when I returned home that evening, flush with the success of the shoot, I found the apartment in chaos. Mia was crying, her little face streaked with tears. Zara was nowhere to be seen. And there, in the middle of the living room, were Walter and Olivia. They were surrounded by the tattered remains of my sketches and fabric samples, their faces twisted with malice. "What have you done?" I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper. Olivia smiled, a cruel, vicious thing. "We put an end to this foolish pipe dream of yours. Did you really think we would let you succeed? Let you humiliate us even further?" I stared at the ruins of my work, months of blood, sweat, and tears reduced to scraps. I wanted to scream, to rage, to fall to my knees and weep, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not in front of them. Not in front of Mia. So I did the only thing I could. I squared my shoulders, lifted my chin, and met their triumphant gazes with a steely one of my own. "Get out," I said, my voice calm and cold as ice. "Get out of my house and never come back. You have no power over me anymore." And with that, I took my daughter's hand and walked away, leaving the stunned Hawthornes in my wake. They had tried to break me, to crush my dreams and my spirit, but they had underestimated me. I was Camille Rousseau, and I would rise from the ashes of their cruelty, stronger and more determined than ever. This was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of grim determination. The Hawthornes had destroyed my designs, but they hadn't destroyed me. I would not let their cruelty derail my dreams. I got Mia ready for daycare, kissing her chubby cheeks and promising to be back soon. Then I headed out to meet with the magazine editor, praying that I could salvage something from this mess. But when I arrived at the office, my heart sank. The editor's face was tight with concern, her brow furrowed as she flipped through the tattered remains of my portfolio. "Camille," she said gently, "I'm so sorry, but we can't run the feature like this. The designs are ruined, and we go to print in less than a week. There's just no time to reshoot everything." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This was my big break, my one shot at making it in the fashion world. And now, thanks to the Hawthornes, it was slipping through my fingers. But I refused to give up. "Not now, not ever. Please," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I can fix this. I can recreate the designs, work around the clock to make it happen. Just give me a chance." The editor hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Okay," she said finally. "You have 48 hours. If you can deliver the designs by then, we'll run the feature. But Camille, this is your last chance. Don't let me down." I nodded, my throat tight with gratitude and determination. "I won't, I promise." I raced home, my mind already whirling with ideas. I would have to work non-stop, forgoing sleep and meals to make this happen, but I would do it. I had to. When I burst through the door of my apartment, however, I stopped short. The place was trashed, even worse than before. Furniture overturned, dishes smashed, clothes strewn everywhere. And there, in the middle of the chaos, was Zara. She was huddled on the floor, her knees drawn up to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Zara?" I said softly, kneeling down beside her. "What happened? Where's Mia?" She looked up at me, her eyes haunted. "They took her," she whispered. "Mom and Dad, they came back after you left, demanding to see her. I tried to stop them, but they pushed past me. They said they were taking her away, that you were an unfit mother, that she belonged with them." My blood ran cold. They had taken my daughter. My sweet, innocent Mia, the one pure light in my life. I grabbed Zara by the shoulders, my fingers digging into her skin. "Where did they go? Tell me, Zara. Where did they take her?" She shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. "I don't know. They wouldn't say. But Camille, there's something else." She took a shuddering breath, her next words hitting me like a sledgehammer. "Jackson was with them. He helped them take her." I staggered back, my vision blurring. Jackson. My ex-husband, the father of my child. He had betrayed me in the deepest way possible, siding with his vicious family over his own daughter. But I didn't have time to process the pain, the anger, the sickening sense of betrayal. I had to find Mia. I had to get her back. I turned to Zara, my voice hard as steel. Pack a bag. We're going to find them, and we're going to bring Mia home. And then... I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. Then we're going to make them pay for what they've done. Zara nodded, a flicker of her old fire returning to her eyes. I'm with you, Camille. No matter what it takes. We set out into the night, two women on a mission. I didn't know where the Hawthorns had gone or how we would find them, but I did know one thing. They had messed with the wrong mother, the wrong woman, and they were about to learn just how far I would go to protect what was mine. This wasn't just about my career anymore, or my pride, or even my revenge. This was about my daughter, my family, and heaven help anyone who stood in my way. It had been 5 years since that fateful night. 5 years since I had rescued Mia from the clutches of the Hawthorns and walked away from their toxic influence for good. In that time, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My feature in the magazine had been a resounding success, launching my career as a sought-after designer. I had moved Mia and myself into a beautiful townhouse, far from the painful memories of our past. We were happy, healthy, and thriving. But I never forgot what the Hawthorns had done, the scars they had left on my soul. And as I watched their lives unravel from afar, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Walter and Olivia, once the king and queen of high society, were now divorced and destitute. Walter had been arrested for his financial crimes, his reputation in tatters. Olivia, unable to cope with the shame and scandal, had fled to Europe, where she lived a lonely, bitter existence. Jackson, my charming ex-husband, had drowned in his own vices. His gambling debts had caught up with him, forcing him to sell off every last possession. Last I heard, he was living in a seedy motel room, drowning his sorrows in cheap whiskey. And then there was Zara, my former tormentor, the girl who had made my life a living hell. She had shown up at my door a few months ago, looking thin and haggard, her eyes haunted by the ghosts of her past. "Camille," she had whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am for everything." I had stared at her, this broken shell of a girl, and felt a flicker of pity. "I forgave you a long time ago, Zara," I said softly. "Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to that anger, that resentment, it was poisoning me from the inside out." She had nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't deserve your kindness, Camille, not after what I did. But I want you to know that I'm going to be better. I'm going to make something of myself, just like you did." I had smiled then, a genuine smile. "I know you will, Zara. You're a Hawthorn, after all, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're survivors." She had left then, her head held high, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. And as I watched her go, I realized that I had finally found the peace I had been searching for all these years. Not through revenge or spite or bitterness, but through forgiveness, through letting go of the past and embracing the future. I looked around my beautiful home, at the photos of Mia and I smiling and laughing, at the racks of clothing bearing my own label. I had built this life for myself, brick by brick, stitch by stitch, and I was proud of it. I thought back to that scared, broken woman I had been all those years ago, the one who had cowered in the shadow of the Hawthorns' cruelty. I barely recognized her now because I was no longer that woman. I was Camille Rousseau, fashion designer, mother, survivor, and I had risen from the ashes of my past like a phoenix, stronger and more radiant than ever before. As I sat down at my desk to sketch out my latest collection, I felt a sense of deep contentment wash over me. I had faced the demons of my past and emerged victorious. I had found my purpose, my passion, my true self, and nothing, not the Hawthorns, not the challenges of single motherhood, not the cutthroat world of fashion, could take that away from me. I was free. I was whole. I was finally truly happy. And as I lost myself in the flow of creation, the fabrics and colors swirling beneath my fingertips, I knew that this was just the beginning of my new life, my new story. A story of resilience, of redemption, of love, a story that was all my own.